This is the cold open, which is when I tell you about the new deals coming from Renegade University. So we have 2 webinars coming up. First, we have The Case Against Morality, taught by the absolutely brilliant Stephen Kirshner. That will be in May, and that is only 1 credit. It meets twice, and I guarantee you it will upend just about everything you believe, no matter what your politics are. I strongly recommend this webinar. Again, it's Stephen Kirshner, The Case Against Morality. Then we have the famous Ben Burgess, well known for his willingness to debate just about anybody on anybody's terms and to do it with tremendous, impeccable integrity as an intellectual. Ben will be teaching logic and politics, how to make an argument. There's no one better qualified for this because Ben wrote a best-selling book called Give Them an Argument, which is precisely this approach. He teaches people how to make arguments in politics by using logic and rationality rather than these things called feelings. So again, go to renegadeuniversity.com. You'll see them on the front page or click video courses and you'll see them right there. Get them now. Stephen Kirshner, The Case Against Morality, coming up soon in May, and Ben Burgess, Logic and Politics, How to Make an Argument, also in June. renegadeuniversity.com. I'll see you in class. This is the Unregistered podcast, and I'm Thaddeus Russell. This is a show about ideas, people, and behaviors that are considered inappropriate, out of bounds, or beyond the pale. The things you're not supposed to talk about if you're a school teacher, a college professor, a businessman, a politician, a parent, a neighbor, or even a podcast host. These are the things you're not supposed to say or even think if you're a good liberal, a good conservative, or a good citizen. Each week, I'll interview a person who has something bad to say. They might be a journalist or a professor. They might be a porn star or a drug dealer. They might just be an ordinary person with an ordinary job who doesn't care about the rules of polite society. I'm not interested in breaking the rules just to be a troublemaker. I'm interested in people who break the rules of conventional thought and to expand the scope of what is possible to say in our society. I'm interested in people who make me think. You are about to watch a 5-minute video taken in January of 2016 of Daniel Shaver being shot to death by members of the Mesa, Arizona Police Department while he is on his hands and knees begging for his life. The officer shouting orders at Danny, his name is Charles Langley. He retired from the force, and he now lives in the Philippines. The officer who pulled the trigger, his name is Philip Brailsford. He was brought back onto the force and is now receiving a pension after being acquitted of murder. After that video, you will then hear my interview with Daniel Shaver's widow, the amazing Laney Sweet. This is my interview with Laney Sweet.
Stop right there! Stop! Stop! Get on the ground, both of you! Lay down on the ground! Lay down on the ground!
Yes.
Who else is in the room?
Nobody.
Nobody else is in the room? Are
Nobody.
you positive?
Nobody. Absolutely positive.
Okay. Since apparently we have a failure for you to comprehend simple instructions, I'm going to go over some of them again, okay? Can you both hear and understand me?
Yes.
All right. If you make a mistake, another mistake, there's a very severe possibility you're both going to get shot. Do you understand that?
Yes.
I do.
Yes.
All right.
What the?
Shut up. I'm not here to be tactful or diplomatic with you. You listen, you obey. For one thing, did I tell you to move, young man? Did I tell you to
No, sir. No,
put
sir.
both
No,
your
sir.
hands,
No, sir. No, sir.
put both your hands on the top of your head and interlace your fingers? Take your feet and cross your left foot over your right foot. Who else is in the room?
Nobody.
Are you both drunk?
No.
No.
All right. So you're not going to have any problems understanding anything that I tell you, right?
Correct.
Yes.
All right.
Can I go to my room?
No, you're not going to do anything but come towards us. Okay. Young man, you're not to move. You're to put your eyes down and look down at the carpet. You're to keep your fingers interlaced behind your head. You're to keep your feet crossed. If you move, we're going to consider that a threat, and we are going to deal with it, and you may not survive it. Do you understand me?
Yes, sir.
Young lady, shut up and listen. All right? You are to keep your feet crossed. Take both of your hands, put them flat in front of you. You are to push yourself up to a kneeling position. Kneeling position. Now, put both your hands in the air. Okay, crawl towards us.
I'm so sorry.
Stop. Okay. Cuff, grab, pull.
No, Rich, pull
Pull,
this
Rich,
way.
Pull. Okay, young man, listen to my instructions and do not make a mistake. You are to keep your legs crossed. Do you understand me?
Yes, sir.
You are to put both of your hands palm down, straight out in front of you. Push yourself up to a kneeling position. I said, keep your legs crossed!
I'm sorry. I just pushed my...
I didn't say this in conversation. Hands in the air! Hands up in the air! You do that again, we're shooting you. Do you understand?
Please do not shoot me.
Then listen to my instructions.
I'm trying to just do what you...
Don't talk! Listen! Hands straight up in the air. Do not put your hands down for any reason. You think you're going to fall, you better fall on your face. Your hands go back in the small of your back or down. We are going to shoot you. Do you understand me?
Yes, sir.
Crawl towards me. Crawl towards me!
Yes, sir.
Don't talk! Get up on him.
I am joined from Durango, Colorado by Laney Sweet, who I want to say, I hope this is okay with you, is a doula and the mother of 2 young girls.
Yes.
I would like to introduce you that way.
Thank you. I don't think I've ever been in any type of interview been introduced that way before.
Don't you think it might be about time? And I'm not telling you to get past anything. I am just saying that I would imagine I'm guessing that for you, your loss of identity is one of the losses that you've experienced. Am I right on that?
Oh, you're completely on the money with that. I've been in school for the last few years, and going into one of my first semesters of like writing was all about identity. And I had a major breakdown because I was just like, I don't know who I am anymore. And it's hard for me to even call myself a doula because I actively haven't been douling in 5 years since my husband died.
Right.
And so I have to like constantly be reminded, like, no, that's still a part of who you are. You just like aren't actively like on call, you know?
Right. And part of the problem is people like me, who, Danny's case became like our major political cause. So we will not let this go. And we want you, and we want you to be a martyr, and we want you to be a Jesus figure, and we want you to, we want things from you, Laney.
Yeah.
and that must be, that must be adding to it. Although of course it's well-intentioned, but I would imagine, I thought about that. And I didn't, it's been 5 years, and I would imagine every time you do something like this, you're introduced as Daniel Shaver's wife.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
That didn't sit.
And
right
even
with
that,
me.
it's like, wait, am I even still a wife? Like, I'm a widow now. Like every time I go fill out any form anywhere, like I don't even get to check that box anymore. Usually it's widow, and sometimes they don't even have that as an option on there. And then I'm like, like I'm not single, I'm not like, I didn't choose this, I'm not divorced, I'm widowed, but then there's still a part of my identity that feels actively like a wife. Like I don't know how really to be anything but a wife still, even though I've been widowed for 5 years.
Yeah, I guess this did occur to me because I was thinking about how to introduce you, and a wife didn't sit well, and widow sat even worse. So I thought about, wait, how about who she actually is? Let's go with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what? Let's because people have seen the video, people know the case. This audience is extremely aware of it. I really want to talk about you first, and I want to
Okay.
because you've been doing a lot, and you've been doing these videos on TikTok, which is why you came on the show. It's how someone brought that to my attention, and they blew me away and mesmerized me, and I thought, you've got to be on my show. I had no idea
Yeah.
you were doing that kind of stuff, and I was so thankful that you said yes. But so a doula, you know, I mean,
Yeah.
that is a job with so much meaning, and so the depth of the meaning to that, as you of course know. I mean, it goes
Yeah.
back millennia, right? I mean, we are talking about
Yeah.
the roots of every civilization and maybe pre-civilization, but it must have tremendous, and knowing you a little bit just from following you and watching you and studying you, it must have tremendous meaning to you. Can you talk about that? I'd love to hear your thoughts on being a doula and why you chose that.
Yeah. So I really think it starts back to Danny and I conceiving Natalie. I was 17 when I found out I was pregnant with her, and we were definitely not like planning a child at that point. We, accidentally got pregnant. We didn't have a lot of support at the time. And I grew up in Nashville, Tennessee, which is about an hour away from the farm, which is like really well known for being an old hippie commune that Ina May Gaskin and Stephen Gaskin started way back, I believe, in like the 60s or 70s. And so I'd kind of heard like a little bit about midwifery then. But it was really at that point in my pregnancy with her that I watched the documentary that Abby Epstein and Ricky Lake created, The Business of Being Born. And it just completely like blew my mind. And I was like, oh my gosh, like there's a whole different way to birth. But at this point, Danny is working 2 fast food jobs. I was unemployed due to being on bed rest from being sick with Natalie's pregnancy. And we had found out that Vanderbilt had midwives, but we were paying out of pocket because at the time I didn't, even though we absolutely qualified for Medicaid, I thought that like Medicaid equaled like, just, I don't know, like bad prenatal care or like, some stigmatized, like, and it's like, we were already up against so much being so young that I just thought, oh, we'll just pay for like an OBGYN out of pocket to get the best care. So, we end up with this OBGYN. We didn't end up switching to the midwives because we had already paid money. And so it was like her birth, and I had a pretty like healthy, typical hospital birth for a first-time mom. I actually got really lucky. Like I spontaneously went into labor on my due date, and as soon as it hit midnight, I'd actually planned an induction for the day after. I was actually trying to avoid birthing with my OBGYN. I was trying to work around her on-call schedule. Yeah. We weren't like overly thrilled with her. And so I was like coordinating with a nurse on the side, like to plan an induction with like a different OBGYN in the office who I'd never even met. And then I was going to bed. Danny was working his last night in Nashville. I was living an hour away out of Nashville at this point. Like I said, we're 17, 18, so we're still living with our parents.
You're that young. Oh boy.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I remember being on the phone with him, and it was like just after midnight, and I went to go turn off my lights, and I was sitting in the bed, or like just sat on the bed to say goodnight to him. And I heard an audible pop, and then all of a sudden a huge warm gush of water. And I was like, I think my water just broke. And he was like, what? And, we thought we had one more day. Like he was going to go to work the next day. And then like, we knew he'd be taking like leave for, however long. And so, 3 hours later, she was born. She came quick and fast. And I had a very like uneventful, I guess you could say, for a hospital birth. Like there weren't like a lot of interventions. There wasn't time for it. She just came so fast on her own, and then fast forward a few years later, I had baby fever. Like, I feel like that's the only thing I've ever known about like my entire life. What I want to do is just be a mom. Like other people, when their kids are like, I want to be doctors or lawyers or an astronaut or whatever, fill in the blank. Like I didn't know. I just knew I wanted to be a mom, and like babies were my thing. Like, so I had a friend who kind of just changed my life. I'd seen this documentary years before. We moved out to Texas when Natalie was 4 months old. And then she had a home birth with midwives, and that really just like opened my eyes to like, this is completely possible. And like, she had such an empowering, beautiful, natural experience that I was like, I want to do this, you know. And Danny and I at that time, we weren't ready to have another baby yet. And so, you know, we talked about it for probably well over a year and decided come April, when Natalie turns 2, we'll start trying to conceive. And literally that month got pregnant, found out the next month we were pregnant. And yeah, so they're like 2 years and 9 months apart in age.
This is Emery.
And,
Emery, right?
Yeah, Emery.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, Danny was a little hesitant at first about home birth. You know, I remember us going to the interview with the midwives and, you know, him having a bunch of questions like most, you know, or not first-time parents, but first-time parents birthing out in the hospital would, you know, like I knew a lot more about the subject because I had done so much research over the past few years leading up to this, but he was hesitant. He was just like, well, what if, you know, the baby this or mom that, you know, like he had all these questions and the midwife was just there to answer all of that. And then from that appointment, he walked out like really confident, like, okay, like we can do this. If this is what you want, like, let's do this. And I was just like, this is what I want. And so, yeah, you know, fast forward 9 months later, we go into labor. And him just even being home for that was so stressful because he worked on call. And so he worked for my dad's company. And, you know, I told my dad, I put my foot down because I didn't have a lot of say in like when Danny was home or not. Like I just had to kind of roll with the punches and he was always gone. But I was just like, he's not going anywhere anytime close to me being 40 weeks. Like he's staying home. And, you know, that was a huge gamble because it's like, you don't, due dates are off in like potentially 2 weeks before or after. Like I can't stand even the term due date as a birth worker because it's just an estimation. You know, babies come when they're meant to and when they're ready most of the time. And so luckily he was home when I went into labor and then we had this really beautiful home birth experience. Actually, our entire birth video is online. I'll send you a link if anybody wants to watch it. It is a birth, I warn you. I mean, it's not like crazy graphic, but I mean, you definitely like, you see things. But yeah, I've always been super like open about that. And from that moment of her birth, it just completely changed my mind. And I remember being like, just even a few months postpartum and calling my midwife and crying and being like, I know what I want to do now, but now I have a newborn and I can't do it. And she was like, there's always time. Like you can become a midwife later on, like just, you know, focus on raising your baby. And like, but I was just like in my mind at that moment, like I decided I wanted to be a midwife. It wasn't even in my mind being a doula. It was like, I wanted to be a midwife. You know, so then
can you explain the difference?
Emery's,
can you explain the difference for those of us?
Yeah, so a doula is non-medical, so like somebody will hire us when they're pregnant and we are there to provide them informational support, emotional support, and then like physical support. So we'll go out and do prenatal appointments in the home, teach them all about the laboring process, the birth process, what postpartum stuff looks like, answer any questions they have, really just help educate them. So it's kind of like a childbirth education curriculum all built into one almost. So they're getting like one-on-one support of any questions they might have. And then, you know, when the time actually comes, you know, a good doula who has like really informed their clients and they know, you know, as they're going into labor, they know, you know, these clients that they can labor at the first part of their labor kind of together. I've taught a mom and a dad how to navigate that first part together. And then they call me out when they're ready for me to be there, because a lot of, you know, people don't realize how fast a labor can be stalled because of so many people coming into this sacred birthing space, you know, like contractions will start to slow down and, you know, or just all sorts of things like the light, sound, like there's so many things that take into play and consideration for laboring effectively, you know, and so, yeah, I just, around 14, she was, I believe like 14 months old when I decided, you know what, I can't like commit to like a 3-year, kind of like, I guess you could say internship or whatever, like as a student midwife, but I can be a doula. And so I remember like thinking I was like settling on being a doula. And then once I started working, I realized actually very quickly, I don't know if I even want to be a midwife anymore. I think I'll just stick with a doula because midwives have a lot of liability. Like,
Yeah.
you know, I've,
Yeah.
you know, been a birth worker for a long time now. And, you know,
Sure.
I've seen babies pass away, and I've watched moms go through miscarriages, and I've watched negligent care providers, whether that's OBGYNs or midwives, you know, who are in lawsuits and, you know, all sorts of stuff. And so very quickly I was like, I think I'll just like not be responsible for the medical aspect of it. And I'll just offer like the support through all the other ways besides medical, you know. So a midwife, they are there for the medical aspect, and a doula is just there to support women. You know, we're just women supporting women, but not just the woman. It's our partner, it's the siblings, like it's getting the whole family involved into this birth and bringing them together so they can go through this really sacred, empowering thing together, and then come out, you know, as a family unit on the other side with like, hopefully, you know, the informed and empowered care, so they can walk away and have a really positive experience.
So I'm hearing two things. I'm hearing courage,
Yeah.
and I'm hearing caretaking.
Yeah.
So you clearly have whatever you want to call it, an impulse, an instinct, a reflex, whatever it is, a drive to take care of people, and in particular children and mothers. Sounds like that seems fairly obvious.
Yeah.
Now the courage part, I want to, you kind of glossed over there, but I want to get back to it.
Yeah.
Which is that you had a goddamn child at home with no painkillers.
Yeah.
Am I correct?
That is correct. Yeah, I was like all.
Let me just say, sorry, Laney, but let me just tell you, just to tee this up for you, okay?
Yeah.
So I have a son, okay, he's 19 now, so this is like ancient history, but you know, and I'm divorced from his mom, but whatever. So when she gave birth to him, and it was a multi-hour process, and by the way, you talking about all the lights and distractions and people like elongating, prolonging the experience. I was like, click, she's right, because that totally makes sense to me, because it was one of these typical all night things in a hospital. But I just talked to another friend, by the way, who gave birth at home, and it was like just like yours, bing, came right up. Anecdotal, but whatever. Anyway, my point is about you, that watching her go through this, and she is not a physically courageous person at all. At the end of it, I just said, you're a superhero. And Laney Sweet, she did it with an epidural, okay? Like with like being completely numb from the waist down. She's still what I witnessed her go through in terms of the pain, the suffering for hours and hours and hours. To imagine you or anyone going through that without any of that stuff, without any painkillers, just, can you please explain that to me? Because, you know,
I think that there's a quote, I wish I could remember it line for line, but Ricky Lake talks about this. I believe it was in The Business of Being Born. And she's like, look, like, I'm one of those people, like, if I've got a headache, like, I take a painkiller. Like, I'm not trying to be out here to be like a superhero, you know, but like birth was different. Like, it wasn't something that needed to be numbed. It needed to be felt. It was pain with a purpose. And I think there's a really distinctive point to make in that this is what we are here to do as women. Like, our wombs are sacred portals to like another dimension. Like, we literally bring in life. Like, it's, you know, it's mind blowing to me, honestly.
It's hard to argue against that. You know, a human consciousness comes out of you. A human consciousness, and think about how complex that thing is, right? Wow.
That and the intergenerational like connection, like, you know, my grandmother held me in her womb because my mom, as a baby, with her eggs that she would already have that would later become me, you're talking about 3 generations are always carried within a woman at any given point.
Okay. Yeah. That's right.
So it's just like, I don't know, it's just kind of like mind blowing to me when I learned that. I was like, wait, what? I'm like, hold on now. Like, my mom was in my grandmother's womb, and she already had her eggs, and that was me, because all women are born with every egg that they'll ever have. And I'm like, that's crazy. And I'm like, man. And then you want to talk about, I don't know, there's so many like fascinating things I want to like study in school, and like epigenetics and trauma, and like how this is all linked together, because we literally carry generations at a time within our wombs.
Oh boy, do you believe that trauma is carried forward? Like, I mean, this is obviously getting really relevant. Do you think trauma is carried forward like that?
I absolutely 100% know it is.
I really hope that you're wrong. I really hope that you're wrong, but I don't know.
I wish I was, but I don't think I am. I think that we are just starting to make breakthroughs where this is going to be something that's talked about more. And I think there's a collective awakening right now to the realization of trauma being carried down and passed down through our ancestors and genetically. And yeah, I think it's like a whole field that I'm super fascinated about, and definitely like plan on studying in school. I'm just like slowly making my way there.
Okay, so before we go down that
Yeah.
less pleasant route, okay, I
Yeah.
want to go back, stay with the doula thing, you know. So
Mhm.
you know, it just, when I found that out about you, like I was struck. I was like, oh my God, this woman has devoted her career, probably much of her life,
Mhm.
to life,
Yeah.
to life, to the
Mhm.
beginnings of life, to making the beginnings of life as good as possible.
Yeah.
I would say the way that you use terms like sacred, and this is, I hope you take this as a compliment.
Yeah.
You worship life.
Mhm.
It
I
sounds
think it's really important to recognize life, but that life in that process also, you know, death is a part of that process. So I'm not just a birth doula, I'm a bereavement doula. I started
oh
out I started as a birth doula, and then
oh
I mean, you can't be in the birth world for too long before realizing that not every mother and every baby survives. And I had very quickly on in my career so I'm also a placenta encapsulator. So, you know, somebody might hire me to be their birth doula, but somebody also might already have a doula, but they would reach out to me to hire me to encapsulate their placenta, which is a whole nother topic.
right.
And I had a client who had a beautiful birth and a beautiful little girl, and her daughter ended up passing away a few days after she was born, and she was my encapsulation baby, and that absolutely rocked my world. It was earth shattering. It was devastating, and you know, that was just one of what would become many of watching parents grieve and go through this really intense
Oh,
process. So I
oh,
immediately took a training with Stillbirthday and became a certified bereavement doula, because no birth worker should be serving in that capacity without bereavement training, because you will 100% encounter loss. It is a part of life.
oh my. And I'm
Yeah.
assuming this is before 2016.
Yeah, no, I feel like my life has been guiding me to like all the information I needed to know for quite a while. The universe has been like pushing me towards like, hey, like you're gonna need to know this information one day. And like yeah, I was really thankful for my bereavement training, and not just that, because I did it with somebody who would eventually become my best friend, Casey. She was a doula out in the area I worked in, and you know, the doula world can be very competitive. It's so strange to me that, like, you know, as a profession that honors women, how they
Yeah.
also can tear apart other women, like, and it's
Really?
just like, yeah, oh yeah, I've had doulas, like I've literally ordered hundreds of dollars worth of business cards and dropped them off at all the birth centers in DFW, and then like doulas who came in and like took all my cards and just like trashed them.
What? What?
Yeah, I've had some really,
I imagined all these kindly, groovy hippie ladies, you know, like
a
what?
lot of them are, but there are some that are like so cutthroat and just like, yeah, I don't know, I just stick by like what's meant for you will always be for you, and the right clients are going to find me, and I'm going to find the right clients. Like, I just, because I'm a good doula doesn't mean I'm the right doula for everybody. Like, as somebody's interviewing me, I'm also interviewing them. I'm making sure that we are both a good fit for one another, and if not, it's not like something I'm going to take personal, you know, like I will give them a referral list of plenty of other doulas who I feel like might be a better match for them.
Mm-hmm.
I've, you know, had to be called in as a backup doula to a birth where I've never even, I mean, I remember walking into this birth specifically changed my career completely. I had a doula reach out to me. She says, I have two moms in labor. I've got one at a hospital and one at a birth center. And I was like, who's the midwife at the birth center? And it was a midwife that honestly is pretty negligent, and I didn't want to work with her. And I said, I'll take the hospital client. And so I'd never been to this hospital either. And thank God I did, because it led me to, it's just such a huge part of my support in Danny's story. I walked into this hospital, and this midwife, Carla Morrow, who just deserves the biggest shout out in the world, because she is changing the face of birth in the United States and Texas, like without a doubt. Like,
Oh
she is
wow.
incredible. I remember walking in, I'd never even met her before. And I turned the corner to get ready to walk into this room, and she peeks around the nurse's desk and she says, "Oh my God, we've got Laney Sweet. She's in our hospital." And I was like, I'm a pretty new doula at this point. I had one client, Lucy Eads, who is a very well-known vlogger for pregnancy on YouTube. And she had delivered and had, all sorts of cameras there. And she had actually asked me to get in the pool with her, which is pretty unheard of as a doula. And so she actually gave birth on top of my lap, and it was like crazy viral. Wow. So I was just kind of like really well known from the beginning because of that birth, and set like this standard for moms who were like, wait, like this doula is like willing to show up in ways that, we've never even seen before. So I walk into this birth and I'm literally like having to double check my phone. Like, what is this mom's name? Like, I've never even met her. And they were just so happy with the care and support they received, even though they loved their previous doula. When it came time for them to have their second baby, they hired me instead of their doula, and it's just like, it's just such an honor, especially a privilege to be hired again a second time. I've unfortunately had to turn away so many clients because, of moving and just not being in a place where I could serve those families because of Danny dying. I have so many pregnant clients like right now out in DFW who would love to hire me, but like, it's like, I'm not going to bring my trauma into your birth. Like, I honor it. And I'm just like, not in I think I'm just slowly starting to get back into a place where, I can do that work, but also I've gone through a lot this year. I was sexually assaulted in January, 2 days before the 5-year anniversary of Danny dying by one of my closest friends. And I had actually just finally like connected with 2 moms and was about to take on my first 2 clients in 5 years. And then that happened. And now I'm just back to like, nope, I'm not bringing any of my trauma into that place. So I don't know. One day I'll get back there. I like dream about, I want to be like the celebrity doula. Like I want to be like a like like known as like the doula that like celebrities hire, that's like very hush hush, like underground, just kind of like highly sought out. Like I would love to like market myself as that. So if like any celebrities ever see this, like
just watch after this podcast. Just you watch.
Yeah.
Brad Pitt will be on the phone for his 9th child or whatever it is. You've been hearing me for a year now extolling the virtues of Paloma Verde CBD, my favorite CBD company in all the world, based in San Antonio, Texas, owned and operated by the married couple Carlos and Vanessa Abelar. I am here today to tell you that they have 2 new products that I am so stoked about. I've actually been asking them about these for a long time, and I'm just so happy they're here now. I'm really excited about this one because I've had a history of insomnia issues. This is an incredible combination of melatonin with CBD in one capsule. I'm telling you, this is the answer for many of us. I love these things. I'm glad they're here, and it's helping me every night. They've improved, I should say, on my all-time favorite Paloma Verde CBD product, which is their fast-acting, high-potency tincture. It's even higher potency now. And it's mint flavored. I love it. So for those of you who don't know, you get 25% off every single product in the Paloma Verde store, including those new products. Also, you get another 10% off for just joining their mailing list. So if you're a first-time customer, that's going to be 35% off your first order. They also have what's called the Unregistered Combo Pack, also known as the Thad Pack, which are my 3 favorite Paloma Verde products. And those are my beloved tincture, which I told you about. Their soft gels, which is 25 milligrams of CBD in every soft gel. This is your medicine right here. If you like your medicine to taste really delicious, so good that you eat it maybe even too much, then definitely get their gummies. They come in various fantastic fruit flavors. 10 milligrams of CBD per gummy. I eat these like crazy. All of this stuff makes me feel better. It alleviates my anxiety. It helps me sleep. It reduces my stress. It makes my life better. and I think you should do the same. Go to palomaverdestore.com, use the discount code RENEGADE, get 25% off everything, 10% off additionally if you join the mailing list, and the unregistered combo pack with those 3 wonderful products, that's 33% off. So again, go to palomaverdestore.com, use the discount code RENEGADE, make your body and your life feel a lot better. Thank you so much. Yeah, so life and death, my goodness, you had really intimate experiences with both long before Danny died, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And well, my God, we haven't even talked about another part of your devotion to life and birth. You as a surrogate mother.
Yeah.
I mean, you also chose to be a surrogate, which plays into the Danny story as well in an incredibly dramatic, horribly tragic way. But do you want to talk about that? Like what, oh, no, I'm sorry. I had another question for you, which is like,
go for it. Yeah.
Drenched in dark irony, which is me asking you how you summon the courage to talk to someone who has lost a loved one, you know, because that was your job, was to talk. I mean, I'm a parent. Okay. So I know what we're talking about here. How on earth, Laney, do you do and courage? I can't even comprehend that as your job to do this on a regular basis, to go talk to, and then have as your mission, your job, you know, to make them feel better about the worst thing that can happen to anybody. How please tell me, how do you do that?
I wish I had just a straight answer for you. Honestly, it's all about it's not even about what you say. It's just, it all comes back to holding space. It's just helping people who are going through loss not feel so alone. You know, connect. Obviously there's practical things you can do. Like if a mom's grieving and, you know, her breasts are engorged and she's got milk for a baby that is no longer there. You know, there are things you can do if she's not, you know, a lot of moms are willing to pump and continue to pump, to donate that. I've also done that in surrogacy, which we can talk about later, but, you know, helping, you know, get her to the right lactation support to help dry her milk up if that's what she needs to for, you know, her healing in that process, or whether that's, you know, like, just simple basic things. Moms can't even take care of themselves after they lose a baby, you know, like they don't get out of bed, like they don't eat, like just making sure they're the most basic things and needs are being met. Because when you go through a life, you know, altering experience like losing a child or a pregnancy, you know, you're not doing well. You're not doing okay. So it's just, I wish there was just like one simple thing, but it's a million little things, and it's taking out the trash, and it's helping with the siblings, and it's honoring her emotions and letting her know that everything that she feels is valid, and letting her feel it, because so many people like immediately want to, and I mean, in my own case, I was immediately thrown on antidepressants as soon as Danny died, and I just became numb and apathetic. I wasn't getting anywhere. I wasn't healing anything. And maybe at that point, that I guess what was needed, but really what was needed was I needed to cry and let all that out. But instead I just became apathetic because I couldn't feel anything. So like really honoring a woman's process of what she's going through, to allow her to feel that, to allow her to cry it out. If that means she has to hit and scream and kick, like do whatever you need to do, like that is okay, and that is encouraged. Like and it's not going to look the same for every woman. I mean, it doesn't look the same for anybody. Grief is so personal, you know, and bereavement, it's such a hard thing, and yet we all go through it. I mean, we don't all necessarily lose a child, but we all experience death. You know, we're all personally going to die. We're only here temporarily, but we all are going to go through watching our loved ones pass, you know. Hopefully that's, you know, at the end of our lives that, you know, our parents are passing, grandparents and things like that, but that's not always the case. You know, my best friend who's been supporting me through my loss for the last, few years, you know, his dad died when he was 3 years old, just like Emery, you know? And so it's like, I feel like, you know, people go through what they go through, but they can then use their testimony and show up to help others. And that's just kind of what I feel called to do. Like, I'm constantly like, what am I here? Like, man, I don't know what I have done in like another life or whatever it is to like have made me gone through so many horrific things, because losing Danny is, yes, it is horrific, but I've gone through a lot of stuff in my life, and I didn't have an easy childhood. I've been through a lot of abuse, and I just like am constantly, you know, like, what the hell did I do to deserve any of this? But if I can use my testimony and my story to reach even one person, to give them hope and courage to move forward and to know that they can find healing, then I've done my job.
Mm-hmm. So I'm tempted to ask you about your childhood. I'm just worried we're going to run out of time. We haven't even talked about Danny. We haven't talked about Danny yet. But I have so much more to ask you about. So the surrogacy, although this does involve Danny. So yeah, what was that? What was the decision? How did you come to that? Why did you do it? And you did it once you already you did it when you had both kids, right? At that point?
Yeah. So we had already had our 2 children. I want to say, gosh, Emery was probably, I mean, I remember thinking about, and I had heard about it back in high school, you know, but like I wasn't obviously planning on doing it then. And then I think it became a real serious conversation probably the year after Emery was born, as I was also getting into birth work, just because, I don't know, I just felt like, you know, I knew that Danny and I, it was going to be a few years before we wanted to try to have another baby. I've been literally writing letters to my son since I was like 15, 16 years old. I don't even have a son, you guys. Like I knew at 11 years old, while on a plane, because my parents had divorced, I was flying, my dad had custody, and I was flying out to my mom, and I heard Celine Dion's A New Day Will Come. I remember crying my eyes out, looking out that window, knowing that one day I was going to meet my son. Like, this has been something in divine work for a long time. And yeah, I just knew that Danny and I weren't in a place that we wanted to have another baby yet. Like I was just kicking off my career. It happened really fast. It was like, you know, but I just felt like, well, there are so many families that struggle with infertility and that they can't carry for various reasons. And like, if I have a womb, you know, that is healthy enough to carry, like, why would I not do that? I love being pregnant. That's when I feel most goddess-like. I absolutely love it. I mean, even though it can be for sure really difficult. So yeah, I started talking to him about it, and Danny off the bat actually was like adamantly against it. He was just like, he couldn't wrap his head around it, and was just like, I can't imagine you carrying like another man's like baby, and like, and I totally understood that. And so we talked about it for a really long time. And then it was in October of 2014 that finally, I remember we had like a serious conversation about it. And he said, if this is really what you want to do, then let's do it. Like, I'll support you through it. And so I honestly was just like, wait, really? Like, we can do it? Because even as a surrogate, which is a little weird, but you're not even legally allowed to do it unless your husband gives consent to do it. So that's a whole nother topic, but I had to have his support to do it. And so he agreed to it. And, you know, it does involve him. He had to fly out to California. He had to get medical testing. He had to go through a whole bunch of stuff himself and, you know, go get background checked, and had to do a psychological evaluation, you know, all the things that I had to do, he had to do too. So like, that was, you know, originally kind of a part of his hesitancy. It was like, it's one thing if you could just do this, but like, you're pulling me into this, you know. And then by the, you know, 2014, that October, he was like, all right. And, you know, I looked into agencies and found what I thought was a good agency at the time, which now I would literally tell people to run from. But yeah, the only good thing that ever came from that agency was matching me with this couple. They sent me a bunch of profiles, and I remember going through this one profile, and they talked about being Pearl Jam fans. And I was like,
oh yeah, that's important.
Oh my God, like, these are my people. I need to talk to them. Danny and I fell in love at a Pearl Jam concert in 2008. I mean, like that was just like the universe that was like, hey, like, throwing this out there. And so we set up a call and we talked to the family, and it was just a match off the bat. Like, they were just such a lovely couple out in California who had been through a lot and really wanted to have a baby. And so, yeah, we started that process. It was, I mean, obviously it's pretty intense. I think I could do a whole podcast on just surrogacy itself. There's so much that goes into it, but ultimately, we went through the whole process. I did an IVF transfer, and we got pregnant with their first daughter. And due to a subchorionic hemorrhage, I was I was 7.5 weeks pregnant, I want to say, but I didn't find out for 2 more weeks. I'm trying to remember how it all went down. Everything's such a blur, honestly. So I ended up having a miscarriage. I was actually dueling 2 births at the time with my midwife that I would later, like, I was like seeing as a surrogate, you know, like I had done so many births with her, Carla, that I was like, this is who I have to have as my midwife. Like, her standard of care is just like far beyond anything I've seen any midwife in DFW give to any mother. I've worked with almost all of them. So I literally had 2 clients in labor, and both of their birthing suites upstairs, a surrogate birth and then another mom. One was just starting to finish, and then one was just starting to get kind of active. And I went downstairs because we were all placing an order to get some food, and I felt like I was leaking on myself. And I went downstairs and went to the bathroom and realized I was bleeding. And so my midwife pulled me into the room and we did a sonogram. And at this point, the baby still had a heartbeat. And she said, you might be losing the baby. And so I called in a backup doula to support my client, but I did stay actually at that birth and sat down throughout the whole thing to film it, because I was supposed to be hired as her doula and her birth videographer. So I stayed to film it. And then it was about a week and a half, 2 weeks later, Danny was out of town traveling. I think he was still in Texas though, because he was pretty close. And I remember just not feeling well. And it's so weird how things stick out and other things just fade away. But I remember asking my daughter to lay down, because she had literally on this couch I'm sitting on, like, had taken up this huge amount of space. And I was like, will you scoot over? Mommy doesn't feel well. Mommy needs to lay down. And I laid down and my grandma called me and said, why don't you guys come over for dinner? And we drove over there just a few miles. And I get to her house, and then I was like, something just told me I really needed to go to the bathroom. And as soon as I walked in and pulled my pants down to sit down, I just had huge clots the size of my hand pass out of me, like 4 or 5 clots. And I was like, holy crap, like, okay, this is it. Like, I've definitely lost the baby at this point. So this is, you know, when I call my best friend Casey, who I did bereavement training with, and I'm like, I need you. Like, I'm losing the baby. I've never at this point had a miscarriage in my life. I've learned all about it. I've trained in it. I've supported other women through it, but now I'm going through it. And it was such a hard experience. And it's so weird because it wasn't even my own baby, but yeah, it was really kind of traumatic. I say that, I mean, it was traumatic, but I was very loved and cared for the whole time. And because I was a doula that worked at this hospital and that was highly respected, like, they went above and beyond and bent, you know, measures for me that they typically wouldn't, you know, do for a lot of women. Like, I ultimately had to have a D&C, which is where they have to suck the remains out, because she just would not detach. Her heartbeat had already stopped. She had stopped growing the week before. And so they took me back in for that. But, you know, they put music on for me. They turned the lights like down low. They actually, because her parents weren't there, I asked afterwards, like, all the remains that get, you know, ultimately sucked into this like plastic container. I was like, can I make peace and like say bye to the baby, like, in this container, you know? And like, they, you know, kind of looked at me like I was a little crazy, but, you know, just things that weren't standard. Like, I was just like, no, I need to do this. Like, I'm not just saying bye for me, but for her parents who aren't even here, who are devastated because they've spent, you know, over $100,000 to, you know, create these embryos, to hire a surrogate, to get an egg donor, to go through all the testing. Like, it's such an expensive process to become, or not to become a surrogate, but for these intended parents to, you know, finally get to the point of conceiving a child. And, you know, that miscarriage alone just cost them $25,000. And so, you know, and that was after 3 or however many months of me being on medication and like, you know, and so we took a break after that for 3 months to kind of heal myself. And then we started right back up again. And I went through another round of IVF, which is really intense. I mean, you have to give yourself an injection in your side and your muscle, basically back in your butt. I couldn't feel that spot for over a year. It was just dead. Like, the progesterone that you inject inside yourself is so thick and it's just so intense. You know, all the hormones, all the medicine you're taking, but, you know, then we did conceive again on the first try, thankfully. And then I carried her. But unfortunately, you know, I was 6 months pregnant with her when I found out that Danny was killed. And so that was really, really difficult to navigate.
I bet. Yeah, no, I mean, of course. And I've heard you tell the story. Do you mind telling the story? So
Yeah.
6 months pregnant. Yeah, tell it once again.
Yeah.
6 months pregnant, surrogate. You have two children. Natalie is what, 6?
She's 6 at the time. Yeah.
And Emery is like 3.
Yeah, she was 3. She was just a few weeks, 2 weeks shy of turning 4 when Danny died.
Okay, and you guys were you living in Texas at the time?
We were living in Texas, yes.
Okay, and he was traveling for work?
Yeah, so Danny would work 20, 25 days a month on the road
Wow.
during the busy times. I mean, sometimes there would be months, where he would be home a little more often because things would slow down. But yeah, basically he just, and, he got paid more per job. So like if he got like, I think it was like $100 per job. And then any job over like 20 jobs a month, he would get like a bonus of, a grand or two, and anything over 25, it would be like another few grand. So like there was definitely incentive for him to stay gone. But like we were always teasing about, I'm going to go like release some birds in the local Walmart so you can actually like do a job from home.
Here, right?
Home. So you're not on the road. Like surely we can find some local stores instead of you, always being in Arizona or California or wherever. So,
so he's driving around a lot, I imagine, just around the Southwest.
Yeah, he always had to drive. Like he very rarely, he did have to fly a few times, but at some point my dad's company switched the type of gun that they used, and it has an air compressor on it, and that you can't fly with. So they actually then, like, flying was no longer an option, so they had to drive.
The famous pellet gun, right?
Yeah.
So, and you're, and I'm not sure we said this. He worked for your dad's pest control company. Is that right?
Yes, he did.
Right. Okay. And part of the job was having a pellet gun, right?
Yes. That was just one of the ways. So like and it's a thing that's very like hush hush because their contracts with all these like large, retail stores, they don't like to talk about what they do, out to the public. They don't want them to know what's happening. But ultimately, the health department comes in and they'll tell these stores, we're going to give you 24 to 48 hours to get this, birds taken care of. Sometimes there's 30 birds inside of a store, and, they kind of hide during the day, but at night when nobody's in there, they're coming down and they're eating your produce, and they have diseases, and it's a public health issue.
Right.
And so, they do like a lot of preventative measures, but sometimes they have to get to the point where they have to lethally shoot them if they can't capture them with nets or whatever. You're talking about birds that are 30, 40 feet up in beams and rafters and stuff. So it's just kind of logically the only way to handle it. But they also focus on exterior stuff, and a lot of it's preventative, but they are always required to carry their pellet gun in the event that they have to exterminate.
Yeah, exactly. So it's January 2016, right? And do you mind, it's just the story is not only heartbreaking, of course, but it speaks a lot to how absolutely fucked up our criminal justice system is. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. But just simply the way that they handled you was to me an atrocity, just that alone.
Yeah.
So would you mind just telling the story? I've heard you tell it before, but just tell the story of your life, what was going on in your life that day, and how it went down.
Yeah. So the last time I talked to Danny was the night before he died, January 17th. Actually, hold on, let me back up. Am I saying this correctly? He died the 18th. No, so I talked to him on the 18th. I'm sorry, I'm getting this, even myself confused. Trauma, PTSD, active. This is happening in real time. Okay, so he died on the 18th. I spoke to him 40 minutes before he was killed. This was our last conversation. We talked for only like 4 minutes. If anybody were to go subpoena our call logs, which Mesa has all of because they subpoena everything in my life, you could see that every time I talked to my husband, we talked for a long time. That, or we would talk even for just a few minutes, but we called each other like, we were just always bored and missing each other, just like constant. And most of the time it was just stupid conversation. And like half the time I'm editing birth videos on the side and he's doing whatever. And we're not even paying attention to each other on the phone, but we're just like on the phone to be together.
Sure.
And so, I talked to him that night and I was telling him that I didn't feel well and was going to actually lay down in the girls' room with them in their bed and go to bed. So we only spoke for just a few minutes. You would think that I would remember every last thing we said. And honestly, I couldn't even really tell you anything we said during that conversation. It was just, I didn't think that would be our last conversation. I didn't feel well. And at 8:00, I decided to go to bed, even though I'm a night owl who's usually up till 2, 3 in the morning. And for some reason, I went to bed early that night. So we get off the phone, and, you know, ultimately everybody has seen the body cam footage that played out not even an hour later. So the next morning I wake up. Danny was supposed to have 2 jobs that night instead of just one. And typically he worked from like 4 to 6 in the morning. So I called him. I woke the girls up, I think around 6 is like the time I'd wake Natalie up to get ready. And we had pulled Emery out of daycare. She had been in daycare for a while, more like a preschool. It wasn't just like a place that they watched her. Like there was like academics and, you know, like really I called like her teacher, her second mom. Like Miss Veronica was incredible, and she's a big part of our story and holding space for Emery. But we had decided that we were actually going to be moving to Mesa, Arizona later that summer.
Oh.
So we had actually planned on moving there. We had spent a lot of time in Arizona. When I had my miscarriage, I took, you know, those 3 months in between that next transfer. We just traveled with him that whole summer, and we spent like at least a month in Arizona. We actually stayed at the hotel he died at, which I didn't realize until after he died. And I went to the hotel in person to go see the room and the hallway and all the stuff. And it hit me like a ton of bricks as I was driving into the parking lot. And I was like, oh my God, I was like, I'm losing my mind. And I was like, no, there's like this Irish like place, like, and a BJ's like play, like there was like restaurants that I could specifically recall. And sure enough, they were right next to it. And I was like, oh my God, we have literally stayed at this hotel as a family together and swam in this pool. Like, I'm like, I wonder what room we were in, you know, like, holy crap, what a weird thing that like, not even like a year before. So yeah, the morning of, I, you know, call him, because Natalie would like want to talk to him sometimes before school, and we would just check in, and he didn't answer the phone. And so then I'm sending him texts and he doesn't respond. And I don't know how long goes by, you know, 30 minutes or so. And at this point, I thought he was intentionally ignoring me. And I've talked about this, and it's something that just eats me alive because it hurts my heart so much that I didn't know my husband was dead. And I started to get so pissed off that I started to send him texts, and I was like, what the fuck? Why are you not responding to me? Like I literally was like getting mad, because he wasn't responding to me. And I'm like, that's so unlike him. Like, I mean, just like, hey, like if you're busy, that's cool. But like what's like, talk to me, you know? And here he is not texting me back, and I'm blowing up his phone. And so I go, you know, to get Natalie ready, and we try to call again. I drop her off at school, and I take Emery back home. So at this point, like I said, we've taken her out of daycare because we're saving money so we can finally buy our first house. And we're looking at buying out in Mesa, Arizona for, you know, 6 months later down the road this coming summer. And so I get Emery home, and she, you know, didn't want to be awake that early and was like asked to watch a movie or something. So I take her back downstairs into her room, which was like a darker room, had the blinds closed, and put on Tarzan for her, which, man, I'm telling you, to this day, Tarzan is such a huge trigger for me. Like it literally, I'll just start crying. Like I can't handle it. I just can't. And we're sitting there, laying there watching it. And I remember kind of feeling like a little sick still. And I'm like, I'm just going to like close my eyes and kind of like drift off, but be like in that half awake, half asleep state to like where you're watching your kid, but like you're still like trying to rest, you know? And something just told me like, you need to figure out what's going on, like try to call him again. And, you know, he wasn't answering. So I text my dad, and I was like, hey, have you heard from Danny? And he said, no. Or I said, have you talked to Danny? He said no. And I, you know, immediately was like, okay, that's really weird, because they always communicated after every single job they did. Like my dad would, for some reason, even when he wasn't working, be awake at 4 a.m. to talk to Danny about his job and like make sure the store went well and that the paperwork was all processed. They had to submit it to like a portal online afterwards, you know, to process it to home office and all sorts of stuff. So I knew something right then, like that wasn't right. And he had 2 jobs to do. So it was like a big, important night for him. And then I asked him, did he show up for his jobs last night? And I'm texting him. I'm not talking to him on the phone. And he says, no. That's all he says. So I get no, you know, back to back twice. And that's when I start like really kind of like, okay, wait, hold on now. And, you know, then my mind starts racing, like, okay, he's not answering the phone. Like, what was the last thing he said? Like, you know, he was just like, he talked about something about he was playing PlayStation. I remember that. And just like talking to his friend, John, I believe, on the game online. And I'm trying to think of like, what in the world's going on? And so at this point, I get up and I'm like, I can't go back to bed. Like, I know something's going on. And then I take Emery upstairs and I put her in the living room and I put on some little TV show, and I'm, starting to make calls, trying to figure out what's going on. And first I signed into our email, because usually I would get a confirmation email when he would book, because he would always book through like the Choice like app, or like whichever hotel he was staying with. He had apps and reward points for all of them. Like we got travel places all the time for free because of just him working so much. He would get those points and then we would get to use them. So like anytime we took our kids to Disney or whatever, like we were staying there for free. And so usually there would be confirmation, and there was no confirmation, which I thought that was so strange, because he always booked. And I was like, okay, maybe he stayed somewhere he knew and he, didn't book it through the app. And so I'm like, okay, but I don't even know where my husband's at. Like, my husband travels so much. Like, I don't even know. Like, I just know he's in the Phoenix area. Like, I have no idea where in Phoenix he's at. I heard him talk about Mesa a lot, and we had stayed in Mesa as a family and yada, yada, but I didn't know he was in Mesa, So I call our bank and I'm like, hey, I'm trying to figure out, I'm trying to locate my husband. I'm a little concerned. Can you tell me if his card's been used anywhere? And they said, yeah, last night there was some food ordered from this restaurant. And I'm like, okay. So then I Google, the name of the restaurant, and then I call them and I'm like, hey, I'm trying to figure out where my husband is. I can't get a hold of him. I'm a little worried. Can you give me any information as to where you delivered the delivery? And they're like, yeah, we delivered it to this hotel. So then I call the hotel and I asked them to do a welfare check on him, and they told me no. And I wish I could remember word for word what they said, but basically they were acting really weird. And I was like, what do you mean? I was like, I'm like, go do a welfare check on my husband. Like, as something, like, I think something's wrong. Like he didn't show up for work. Like he could have died in a sleep or choked on something, or I don't know. Like, I didn't know what had happened. Like, my mind's going to like the craziest scenarios, never in my wildest dreams that I think at this point my husband's been shot by police. I can tell you that. But I thought something had happened, and maybe something happened in his sleep or something. I don't know. And ultimately, so they tell me no. And then, at this point I've already called Danny's best friend. I said, hey, when's the last time you talked to Danny? He said, we were playing PlayStation last night. I called Danny's mom, who, Danny his parents and I weren't really close from the beginning of our relationship, just because I think from the beginning, like, obviously no parent really wants to find out that their 17 and 18-year-old are having a baby. And, we were so broke. We didn't have a car. Like, we had nothing going for us, but we were committed to still following through with our pregnancy. And they absolutely wanted me to have an abortion, and I didn't want to. And so from the beginning, I just kind of wasn't really adored by them, you could say. But I really also never got the chance to know them that well. Or was given the chance for them to get to know me.
Now you
guys, I did call.
You guys have been together, sorry, for like about 8 years at that point?
Yeah, okay. Almost. I think when he died, we were like, because I remember Bonnaroo had just announced their lineup, and Pearl Jam was actually headlining that year. And it's the first time that they were going to be headlining since when we fell in love in 2008. And so we were like, oh my God, we're going. We were like so excited. I was like, I don't even care who else is playing. Pearl Jam's going. We're going. It's like 8-year anniversary, because we didn't even celebrate our, so we were married through common law. We were so broke and poor. Oh. We never had money to have a wedding. Like, that was something we actually at some point did start to plan a few years into our relationship, before we classified ourselves as like husband and wife. But we never actually got to have a wedding. And when we decided to think about doing it, we started looking up the realistic cost of it. And we're like, you know what, like, we're already like, we have, at this point, I don't know if that was before Emery would have been born or around the time, I think probably before she was born. Cause like, you can see it in our birth video that we're both wearing wedding rings. We just were like, you know what, we're not going to like save up all this money to just throw away on a one-day thing. Like, we want to buy a house. Like, that's our goal. So we never actually even got to have a ceremony together. But we were married through common law in Texas, which is also a big part of the story of ultimately, we'll get to that. So
you're trying to find out so you're middle of the story of finding out what the hell happened.
Yeah.
And you're talking to his parents. That's right. That's how I diverted you. You're fine. His parents. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So I call his mom at work, and I'm like, have you spoken to Danny? Which, I mean, I don't know why they would. From my recollection, I don't even know that they spoke a whole lot. I mean, at least when he was home, like, it's not like I heard him talk to them a ton. And he talked to me all the time about what he did during the day and who he talked to and stuff like that. So it was a little weird that I would even reach out to his mom, because it's like, why would he talk to you early in the morning? But either way, I still reached out. And she said no. And then she starts, texting him and calling him or whatever, trying to figure out what's going on. And so I've alerted them now to something's up. And, I've already talked to my mom and my dad, and, we start calling every hospital in the Phoenix area and the Mesa area, every jail. Like, we were calling everywhere we could, just trying to figure out any information. And then finally,
this is the day after, right? I'm sorry, this is the day after, isn't it?
Yeah, this is the day after. He died on the 18th. This is January 19th. About, at this point, probably at this part of the story, it's probably like 10:30 in the morning or something like that.
How on earth did they not go to his identification and find who he was and call you? I don't understand that.
Oh, we'll get to that.
Okay, good.
Yeah, there's a whole story about that too. That's because they had the wrong Daniel Shaver is the answer to that.
I have not heard this. Oh my God.
Oh yeah, no. Remind me to come back to that, because my PTSD gets me all crazy everywhere. So they let's see, my mom, at this point, we know, like, obviously the hotel, like, they were acting really weird, and they just stopped answering our calls. Like, they literally took the phone off the ringer. Like, they allowed it, like, the first like 20 times we called, it just would either be forwarded to like voicemail or ring all the way, and then eventually they just took it off the ringer, so you couldn't even make a call to this hotel. And I was like, what the hell is going on?
Like I was like, major national chain.
Yes. And I'm like, what is going on? Finally, my mom gets through, because we're all blowing it up. And she's like, look,
what?
I need you guys to tell me what the hell is going on. My daughter is 6 months pregnant. She's at home. She's got 2 kids, and she is freaking out. Like, just tell me what's going on. And the lady, I believe she spoke to, said, we've been instructed not to give a statement. And my mom immediately said to me later on that it went off liability. Something happened at the hotel. So my mom at this point knows something's happened at the hotel, and she's got to call me and talk to me about this. So she calls me and she said, so I talked to them, and they said that they've been instructed not to give a statement, and I'm, concerned that something has happened. And I wish I could remember exactly. I want to say that they told her, because I don't think it was me they told, to call a detective with Mesa Police Department, and that they would be able to provide further information for us. So immediately we have this name and number. My mom hadn't called them, and I think this is really important to mention, that I am the first person to be given this detective's name and number. So I'm the first person looking for Danny who calls and leaves a voicemail. So I call, they don't answer. I leave a voicemail. I don't know what I said, but I'm freaking out. I'm looking for my husband. I've been told to call you. I don't know what's going on. And I keep calling back, and they're not answering. So I get to the point where I listen to the voicemail, and I want to say it was Detective Rayburn was the person I was supposed to call. And so I listened to his voicemail, and it says something about criminal investigations. And so I type in Detective Rayburn, Mesa, Arizona, Police Department, and Google those keywords, or criminal investigations or something, and it pops up with like criminal investigations, and then it's like 2 different types of like units that he works for, and one was something drug related, and then the other one was homicide. And I'm like sitting here thinking, like, did my husband like get caught like doing drugs or something? And I'm like, what the fuck? Like, I'm like, what is he even doing? Like I'm like, what? And I'm like, oh, like running through my mind, and I'm just like, that doesn't even make any sense. Like, he was about to go to sleep. Like what would he have been doing? And then I'm like, okay, that doesn't feel right. And then I'm like, okay, homicide. And I'm like, well, what the hell is that? Because I was in such a shock that I'm like, I don't like, homicide was definitely not the option. So it was like drugs was the option, but then I'm like playing that through my mind. Like, Danny, did make a mistake, and he was on probation. He got a DUI a few years before. And he was 2 weeks away from being off probation when he died. And so, like, just knowing that, like, drugs were eliminated pretty quickly from my mind, because he's tested all the time for stuff, which is another part of this. It's so frustrating. Had he been, allowed to have access to cannabis like he wanted, he wouldn't have probably been drinking, but that's besides the point.
Oh, really? Thank you for saying
yeah. it's so frustrating to me, you know, this like the
Oh,
government, you know, trying to say that we were not allowed to, you know, like our personal choice of using plant medicine. I'm a huge advocate for plant medicine's a huge part of my story, which if you want, we can totally get into that. But so yeah, he wasn't allowed to, you know, smoke pot or cannabis or whatever you want to call it. And literally that fueled ultimately, I think at the very end of him about to know he was getting off of probation, like him, I don't even think he had honestly been drinking often. Like because I have a recorded call of him the last night I ever saw him. I bought him a ticket to go see Tool, and I have this call recorded, and he talks about that he is going to have a beer at the concert. And even though I know he's on probation, I'm not condoning this, but I'm also like, just be safe about it. Like, you can't risk anything. You're a few weeks away from being off probation. He's like, I'm not stupid, Laney. Like, you know, he's like, I'm going to have a few, and I'm going to make sure I drink enough water and there's enough time. Like, I'm not driving anywhere. Like, he had learned his lesson, you know, but because he didn't have access to cannabis, because that shows up in your system for so long, you know, he resulted to drinking, which is out of your system a lot faster. So anyways, I'm, you know, making all of these calls, and I, you know, Google this. And so homicide comes up, and I'm like, what the hell is homicide? And I look it up, and I'm like, that means somebody died. And I immediately was, I mean, obviously, like I didn't even have to think about it. I was like, Danny didn't kill anybody. But then that shit hit me. It was like, oh my God, wait, like, if it's not drug related, because he's on probation, and I know my husband would never kill anybody. I mean, maybe in self-defense if somebody was trying to kill him or something, but even then, he honestly would probably just take a bullet. Like, that's just not Danny. He was not an aggressive person at all. And so then my mind is like, wait, like, is he dead? And is that why I can't get a hold of him? And I'm like, what the hell, you know? So I'm just like trying not to freak out and trying to keep myself calm. And Emery's in the other room, and I can hear her on the TV and watching some little show or something, some, you know, little annoying kids show. And, you know, I'm talking to my mom and my dad, and we're all calling each other. Like, literally my phone's just like blowing up between all these like calls. And at this point, I had called Mesa Police Department, not the detective, but the actual department, because I'm like, I'm not waiting on this detective to call me back. No one's calling me back. So I called the police station, and I say, I was told that you guys have information with about what's going on with my husband, and I need you to talk to me right now. Like, I'm not waiting another second. I need you to tell me what's going on. And she said, we have nobody in the precinct who can speak to you right now. We will have to dispatch somebody, and it's going to take at least 30 minutes. And I'm like, how is there no police officer? Nobody can talk to me. Like, what is this? Like, this is so frustrating. But that, I mean, what do I have to do but just say, okay, you know? So I'm like, okay, here's my name, here's my number, call me back immediately. And I wait 30 minutes, and they don't call me, and I call them again, and I'm like not getting through to anybody, and they do not call me back. And so at this point, with them not calling me back, the only place I could think to call was the medical examiner, the coroner's office. And I Google Maricopa County medical examiner or whatever, coroner's office, and I start the call. And I remember them answering. A woman answered, and I said, hey, I'm trying to locate my husband, and I don't know what's going on. Could you tell me if you guys know of anything? Like, and I don't even realize in this moment, like, what I'm really doing, but like, she's like, yeah, sure. Let me, you know, actually she was kind of a little rude. And she's like, yeah, let me, like, what's his name and date of birth? So I give him his name and date of birth. And she immediately says, we have a file. And I'm like, what? And so my mom tries to call me, and I forward her call to voicemail, and she texts me, and she's like, have you found out anything? I was like, I'm on the phone with the coroner. And she doesn't even respond. And then the lady says, can I place you on a brief hold? And I'm in shock, and I'm like, yeah. And, you know, I like it really, like, I mean, it's like, this shit is just like the movies. Like, it's so, everything goes quiet. You start to hear ringing. Like, it's just like, it's so movie like, it's so real. And, you know, it felt like minutes, days, months, you know, I don't even know how long. And then finally this man answers the phone, and he says, first off, I'd like to send my condolences to you, ma'am. And I just remember, like I said, like everything ringing and going silent, and just like being like taken I'm just like like I'm taken out of like my reality. And then all of a sudden I come back to, and I hear the TV playing in the other room. And I hadn't even in my like mind processed even what that meant for me. But then it hit me for my kids. That was the first part that really hit me. And I was just like, oh my God, like there's no way like this. Like I was just in complete shock. I think that This Is Us really portrayed a really beautifully moving scene. I swear to God, so much of that show could be written about my life. Like there's so many moments of that show that are just so accurate, where she like finds out that her husband died and she like goes like to the vending machine and then like comes back, and like the way she, like that scene like plays out, like I literally started panic cleaning. That is the first thing I did. I knew, even though I didn't understand what the hell that fully meant, because I was in shock, all I knew is that, because I called my dad, and I remember my stepmom, I will never forget the sound of her voice as she like screamed out to me, like while crying, like, "Oh, Laney, I'm on my way," and hung up the phone. And, her and my brother immediately came to my house because they live closer. My mom, she's in Tennessee. My stepmom and my dad are just like 45 minutes away. And then I'm thinking so we rented their house, and I'm thinking, oh God, she's on her way. So I start panic cleaning. There's Cheerios under the table and there's toys all over the living room. And, and I'm like panicked, like I've got to get my house in order before all these people start to come over. Like I literally didn't even take a damn minute to sit down and breathe and process any of that. Like I just started panic cleaning and started contracting immediately. And I had to, then call, I want to say Casey was one of the first people I called. She had supported me. We did bereavement training together. She supported me through my miscarriage, and I called her and told her Danny died. And she said, I'm, going to come over today. And, she had to figure out a situation with her kids and that she was on her way, and then I had to remember calling my midwife. And it's just wild to me, like to think back at that. I literally remember being in the fetal position on my hardwood floor, contracting, talking to her in shock. And she was like, I'm on my way right now. And she like drove an hour, or I think she was in Dallas at that point, like 2 hours out to my house to come check on me and take care of me, and ultimately bring me a prescription to stop my contractions, because I started going into preterm labor. And then I had to make a call to a backup placenta encapsulator, because I had a placenta that I was about to start processing that morning from a birth that I just served not the night before, but the night before that, that I was going to do the night before, but I felt sick that night. So I decided I'll just start it first thing in the morning. And, this is the day I found out Danny died. So I, called my friend Barbara, and I'm like, I need you to come pick this up. And I said, here's my client's number. I was supposed to go do follow-up postpartum care with her. And I literally never like spoke to her like ever. I mean, months later or something, but I just said, I was in such shock. I was like, just take my client. I can't even handle this. Like encapsulate her placenta. I need you to go do postpartum care for her. Like I was just in shock. Like I couldn't even process what that really meant for me in that moment. And then I remember having to call the parents of the baby I was carrying, and I didn't want to worry them. And I remember being so like, I texted them and I said, hey, I just want you to know everything's okay, or something along these lines. I'm not, word for word paraphrasing here. I said, but I need to talk to you. And I said, but the baby's okay. I just want you to know the baby's okay. Because we had a miscarriage before, Yeah. And they both work at the same high school. They're both English teachers, and they're both in class. And Ginger's the kind of mom, she was so, they wanted this baby so bad that anytime any little thing, like something went wrong, like they were always so like, they've spent so much money and time and energy and like love and poured their heart into this, that they like, even the slightest thing they would freak out, like, oh God, is everything okay? And so I knew, I was like, I just want you to call me when you guys get at home from school. Like we need to talk. And like, she was not having any of that. She was like, no, we're talking now. Mm-hmm. And, having to tell her Danny died. And she was like dumbfounded. She was like, no, like there's been a mistake. And I was like, no, like Danny died. And, like it was just such a wild thing to have to make all these calls, and to tell people, like I had to call his best friend back and be like, hey, and he had told me earlier in the morning, because when I called him and said, hey, when was the last time you played PlayStation with him? And I said, John, I think something's wrong. I think Danny's dead. And he said, Danny's not dead, Laney. And I remember him kind of like disregarding it and laughing almost. And I said, no, something's wrong. And I called him back and I told him, and yeah, it was super hard conversations that day. You know, but I was in such shock. I don't think I even came out of shock for so long. Like, it's such a weird thing to go through.
Look at what your reflexes were. So
Yeah.
the worst thing that ever happened to you, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So your first reflex was, oh my God, there's Cheerios on the floor. I need to clean up my house for my parents-in-law. So you felt an obligation to them.
Yeah. Well, that would be my stepmom, not my in-laws, but yes.
Sorry. Yes. So, yeah.
My stepmom. Yeah.
Other people. And
other people. Yeah.
And then the couple for whom you're a surrogate, you worried about them and called them, and you took care of them. And of course, your very first thought and your enduring thought was for your children. You know, other people. You know, that's really striking to me. And so the person who wasn't being taken care of at all was you.
Yeah. No, absolutely not. My midwife, she was, I think, the first person that like really made me realize like I needed support. But even then, that wasn't even about me. It was about the kids. And she said, we're going to do you want me to have a counselor come out? And she said, I can. So it's a counselor that also worked in the birth world and dealt with a lot of bereavement. And she was somebody that helped birth workers process trauma, because as birth workers, we endure a lot of trauma witnessing births too. Like, not all births are smooth and easy. So we need therapy after, you know, birth sometimes to process what we have witnessed, especially when working with like really crappy care providers, I guess you could say. And so yeah, she had said Jessica could come out and put me in touch with her. I don't even remember hardly speaking to Jessica, but I remember her coming out so I couldn't stay home that night. And at this point, I have not told my kids anything. They definitely are picking up on something's going on, because, you know, my stepmom and my brother, who are never at my house, are at my house, and my brother's taking the girls out on a walk or maybe in the golf cart or something. Like, he took them out for like over an hour out of the house when I was just like breaking down, like in shock and freaking out, and trying to get these contractions to stop. And, you know, I've got my doula. So I had 2 doulas I had hired at the time. You know, I've got Casey, my bereavement doula, who supported me through my miscarriage. And I knew during that miscarriage, I need you to be there for Ani's birth, because we went through so much together through that loss. But I also, before I'd ever hired her, I wanted to hire somebody I didn't have any personal connection to. So I had hired another doula, Christy. So these 2 people ended up being like, I literally call them my life doulas. They basically lived with me for the first few months. They were there every single day, helping with every single thing. Totally took on way more than they should ever have had to have taken on as just like my birth doulas for my pregnancy. But women supporting women, you know, like, this is what we do. If anybody ever wants to Venmo them, I'll have to like link that into a thing. I feel like they should be like given billions of dollars one day or something.
Well, it's women supporting others, and that was the problem right then. It wasn't you. All your instincts were toward other people, for other people, right, instead of for yourself, which, you know, is just in an extreme case. That story is just like, I need to just sit with it. It's so powerful.
Yeah,
you know,
it was really horrific. Like, I remember, so I couldn't be home alone that night, and gosh, I remember Jessica, this therapist, reaching out to me, and she said, I've seen clients till really late. And I lived like, you know, over an hour outside of DFW, out in the middle of this rural like town in Granbury, out in a gated community, even like at the outskirts of this town. Like, we like lived deep out in the middle of nowhere. And, you know, she was willing to drive once her like night ended, and, you know, around 9 o'clock to come meet me or something. So she didn't even get out to my grandma's house until 11 o'clock that night, I want to say. I remember just like laying on the couch, just completely in shock. Actually, before, I remember my grandma coming over to my house, and I remember my grandma, I called her and I told her, I think, what had happened. Or, I mean, I didn't know what happened. I just told her Danny died. I remember her coming to my house. And this is another moment that I remember that's so similar to like This Is Us, because she gets to my door and she's crying, and Emery's in the room and she doesn't know that her dad's dead, right? You know, so my grandma gets to me and she's freaking out, and I look at her and I like very sternly and firmly said, you need to stop crying right now, or you need to go home.
Mm.
And I was just like, I need you right now to compose yourself, and you cannot bring this in here right now. Like, because my daughters didn't know, and I didn't want them to know. I didn't have anything to tell them. I didn't know what had happened. Like, I needed time to process that. I needed to speak to a therapist first. Like, but that scene, there's a scene that's just like that in that show. And I'm like, damn, I literally lived through that moment. Like, you guys go watch that scene. Like, there's a scene where somebody comes to, like, she just finds out she's widowed, and like, they're like breaking down, and she's like firm, like, no, you're not going to bring that into this house. Like, that was straight up me with my grandmother. And I felt horrible later about it, because she was just sweet old lady trying to be supportive, but like, I just remember she looked a freaking mess. She was tears red. And I was just like, no, you are not coming into my house like this. Like, you need to either go back home, or you need to, like, be like, okay, because you're going to freak out Emery, and we can't freak out Emery right now. And so she calmed down, and then she came in and whatever. But so I decided to go stay at her house, and Jessica, this therapist, came to me at really late in the middle of the night. And I remember to the point where I was honestly like just really ready to go to bed, but I just knew that I needed her to come out there. And the whole conversation was all about how to tell the kids. And that's like, it was just all about how to tell the kids. And I remember her telling me, tell them in a neutral location, somewhere they don't have any connection to their dad, which I kind of half listened to that advice. It wasn't like, we do have some kind of memories tied to this, but nothing like too concrete, where I ended up telling them, and to be very short and to the point, mommy got a really hard phone call and daddy died, like very to the point, because of their ages. And and I'm a bereavement doula, and I know all this stuff, and yet I'm still like, in this moment, I don't even know how to go through this. Like, I can walk other people through this, but like, all my training in a way, in this, at least in the very beginning, like, it's like it went out the window. Like, I was just like, this cannot be my life. Like, what the hell is happening? And so yeah, I was so thankful for her to come over and to remind me of all these things, because I was just in shock, and I was forgetting even, all the things that I knew, and then gave me the strength. And I think I still waited another day or two before I told the kids. I had to get into a place where, I was trying to learn more information, and I knew they're going to have questions. And I want to say, as hard as it was to find out Danny died, I think it was either equally hard or harder to tell the kids. I remember my doula Christy being at my house, and she had been there for days at this point. She hadn't gone home. She didn't have a change of clothes with her. I mean, she didn't even know she was coming over for that long. Like, I couldn't be alone. And she said, I need to go back to my home and to my kids for a little bit. And, I had other people there, so it wasn't like she was leaving me alone. And she said, so I think I'm going to go home tonight for a little while, and then I'll come back. And I said, I need you to be with me before you go. And we decided, this was like probably 30 minutes before school was going to be let out. And so we picked up Natalie, and I will never forget this giant smile on her face. It literally breaks my heart. And she was skipping to the car, and she just had this big smile on her face, and I just started crying. And Emery's in the back seat, and I told them that we needed to go have a conversation, and we were going to go to the lake and go sit on the dock. And so the week before, when Danny had been home, I'm so thankful we actually kept Natalie out of school. The second to the last day she ever saw him, we kept her out of school all day for some reason. And I'm so glad we did. And we went to the park, and we rode bikes and scooters, and we had bought and met up with a friend. Girl Scout cookies had just started being sold, and we bought a bunch of Girl Scout cookies. And so I had all these cookies still in the car. And we took the cookies out in the dock, and we were just throwing them to the fish. They're feeding fish some lemonades. And I remember asking Christy to take a picture of the girls and I one time before I told them, because I wanted to have one more picture of them before I completely shattered their life. And that picture I look absolutely horrible in. Oh my God. Like, it's like one of the worst pictures of me I've ever seen. It was really cold, and we're all in jackets, and and so I had them sit down, and Emery, I believe, was on Christy's lap, and Natalie was sitting right next to me. And I told them that I had to tell them some really hard news, and at this point they knew something had been going on, and they hadn't talked to their dad in a few days, and I told them, just like Jessica had told me to say, that mommy had gotten some really hard news, and I got a phone call, and that daddy had died. and they were both just completely silent. And then Natalie started laughing, and she, for just like a minute, was just laughing, and she's like, Daddy's not dead. And I just started losing it and crying, and Christy's crying, and Emery's just holding like Christy like really tight, and Natalie's just like in complete shock and denial, you know. And then it kind of like hits her, and she like looks at me because of my reaction, and I said, honey, I would never ever lie to you or joke about this. I said, Daddy's dead. And she just got really somber and real quiet, and I don't even remember if like she started crying or if it was like little tears or what. And I just pretty much right after that conversation, it was just real quiet, and she said, I want to go home. And so we got in the car and I took him home, and I'm telling you, that moment sucked. That sucked so bad. Oh God, I haven't even relived that in a minute. Yeah, it was pretty sad. It was really heartbreaking to have to break my heart, or my kids' hearts, you know, and have to tell them that. I think it's one of the hardest things you could ever do as a parent, is have to tell your children that their, you know, other parent is dead, and have to be the one to break that news to them. And I'm so thankful that Christy was with me, because I could not have done that alone. I wouldn't have wanted to. I just remember Emery immediately like wanting to like be held, and like she, you know, she obviously had no idea what that even meant. And I mean, none of us really did. Like, we're all just completely in shock. It took a long time, I think, for us to process it. I mean, it was still months later, and Natalie would tell me, I mean, God, she even told me this still like 2 years after he died. And she said, Daddy's not really dead. Daddy's just on a work trip, you know, because he was gone so often that they just, you know, it was okay for him to be gone because he was working. And so she literally for years just told herself that he's not really dead. He's just out working, and, you know, he's going to come home. And so, yeah, she just recently got put on medication. So she died, or she died. Well, shit, we all died. We all died that day. Let's just say that. She was very suicidal. So she was 6 years old when this happened. She tried choking herself to death when she was 8 at school. There was some like signs leading up to it. She started writing in her journal talking about that she wanted to die, and the school brought me in, and, you know, I had to go through all sorts of stuff, and I took her to the hospital. And I mean, we were in therapy from literally day one. Like, I mean, I had a therapist, Jessica, there day one for us, and then they started almost immediately. We've done all sorts of therapy, and I kept just getting calls from the school about all this different stuff. And then I'm out eating with an ex of mine that I was dating at the time, and we were out, I think, eating like Chinese food or something, having lunch, and I get a call from Natalie's school, and they were like, we need you to get up here immediately. And she had tried choking herself to death, and our neighbors had offered to let the girls go to this. We had just moved to Denver not too long before, and offered to pay for the girls to go to this what do they call it? Like a church camp or whatever. And I was a little hesitant about that, but I was like, you know what? Like, I grew up in church, and I always loved the camps, and like, I just don't want, you know, kids to be indoctrinated and stuff. Like, I want them to find and figure out what it is that they believe on their own with time, you know. But I was like, you know what? They're kids, like, they'll have fun. They're going to sing and whatnot. So I let her go to this camp. This is like just so messed up. She literally, because she thought that if she died, she could be reunited with her dad in heaven, she tried to choke herself to death. And so, yeah, we had started a lot more therapy again after that. And, you know, she just, honestly, I've hardly even seen her cry at all. She's just so private about it. She doesn't allow herself to feel emotions. She's just so shut down. And she came to me yesterday and told me, so actually, let me back up. A week ago, I took her to the doctor, and she's been having a hard time lately. We're all having a hard time. We're losing our house. We haven't had a car. And since February, like, we don't know what's happening with our lives right now. And everything's pretty scary, and they're feeling it. And I'm feeling it. And we just don't know what's going to happen. And And I just knew for the next month, it's only going to get more intense, and everything's ramping up with our civil case. And they all of a sudden want to settle, but I don't want to settle. And I want to try to take them to trial. And I was like, you know what, maybe now's the time that like she gets on some medication for a little bit. And the doctor had mentioned it. And I said, I've been hesitant up until this point, just because the thought of putting such a young child on pharmaceuticals, like, I've done that. They literally, I could tell you all about that, how, I've tried, I could show you bags of them around my house of every medicine I've been on since Danny died. And none of that helped me. None of it did. It actually made my life a lot worse. I just became apathetic and numb. And at one point, even when checking myself into the hospital to keep myself safe because I was suicidal, I went in with suicidal thoughts, and I came out and I tried to take my life 3 times, by choking myself with a cord, by drowning myself. And the 3rd time was I had a gun sitting on the bed, and the girls were with my grandma, and she called me and said, Emery doesn't feel well and she wants to come home. And so at that moment, I just I had was 2 seconds away from shooting myself. And then, my little baby needed me and needed to come home. So she came home, and I called my friend. I said, you got to take this gun for me. Like, I'm not okay right now. And I broke down. I said, I need to go to a hospital. And I went to a hospital, and they pumped me full of medications, and they put me on an antipsychotic, Latuda. And it literally made me schizophrenic. I was hearing things. I was saying things. I believed that Danny and Mesa were working together, that he had hated me so much and wanted out of our marriage, that he, was faking his own death, and all sorts of crazy, crazy things. I lost control over bodily functions. My anxiety was so high that I couldn't, I would urinate on myself. As embarrassing as it is to say, but this is the real effects of what this has done to me. I had no control over my body at all. I was just so out of it. And it was at that point that I decided I'm weaning myself off of all of this stuff. And that's when we moved to Colorado, and I started to ultimately save our lives. So I had gone through hours and hours of therapy and pharmaceuticals, and I was really hesitant to put her down the pharmaceutical route because I just knew that it didn't work for me. And I was, she's so young, and her brain's not even fully formed. And then I just, finally was like, you know what, maybe right now, since I've been assaulted in January, I've been on Valium every single day, and it's literally been saving my life. And maybe it's okay that she needs that for a little bit, and that's okay. And so she just started taking it. And then she came home yesterday, and she told me, she said, I need to tell you about something. And I was like, okay. And she said, we were reading this poem, and we had to summarize this poem. And it gets to this line about Sam McGee being cremated. And she said, so I started to cry. And I was really surprised to hear her talking about crying, because she just doesn't cry. She's just so shut down. And then she says, well, at first it just started slowly, but then it just started happening so fast I couldn't breathe. And so she started to hyperventilate yesterday at school, and they took her to the counselor, who is amazing. Mrs. O at her school is just incredible, and calmed her down, talked about everything that's heavy and stuff. And she said to me, well, I think it's interesting that this happened on the one day I didn't take my medication. Which, I don't know how fast it really takes work and kick in, or if there's any correlation to it. But, it's just man, that. And then Emery told me yesterday, I had a dream about Dad, and she hardly even remembers her dad. And I just thought it gave me chills. And she said, I had a dream about Dad, and he fell down, and his friends were trying to help him up, but they couldn't get him to get up. And then they tried to help him, but he just wouldn't get up. And I was like, whew, that was weird. I don't know. I just feel right now we're all having kind of really vivid dreams and stuff. And I don't know. I don't know how it's all connected. I don't know what I'm here for. I know that I'm here for some greater purpose that is way beyond something I can see. And I think that it's slowly starting to unravel. I don't know what that is, but I think that when you pay attention to the signs, they are there. I knew the last time I saw my husband, that was the last time I was ever going to see my husband. Even before then, I had a dream. I called him about panicked crying in November of 20, I guess that would have been 15. And I called him crying, and I said, we're not going to move to Mesa. And he's like, what are you talking about? We're going to move to Arizona. And I said, no, something's going to happen. We don't move there. And I was crying, and he was like, Laney, it's okay. It was just a dream. And I was like, no, something told me we're not moving to Arizona. And then the last time I saw him, I buy this ticket for him to go see Tool. and he leaves. And I remember him being so slow to get on the road, which like was so strange to me because he was so excited to go see Tool. And I like, normally I would be the one who was like trying to claw and keep him home any second, you know, longer I could. But I was like, get the hell out, go see Tool for the first time. Like so excited for him. And he was so slow and so patient. And he pushed Emery in the swing. We had went up to have lunch with Natalie at school. So, you know, the day before we kept her out of school. This day we sent her to school, but we went and had lunch with her. So the last time she ever saw her dad was at lunch at school. And then they called her, you know, back to it's time to go to class, and we left and went back home. And I was taking all of his stuff out to his truck to get ready, and he just was not in any hurry to get on the road. And I just remember literally sitting in his truck with it open, like looking at him like, what are you doing? Like, come on, like it's time to get on the road. And it's like, I swear to God, the universe knew that this was the last moment that we had together. And he was just so patient, and he was just pushing Emery in the swing. And then he got in the truck after a minute, you know, and left. And every time he would leave, I would always be really sad for a few days. Like I wouldn't label myself as like depressed, but like I would definitely go through these like really low lows. Like I hated him leaving. It was always really hard for me. And so my go-to when I'm sad is I go to water, like water and music are my thing. So I immediately went downstairs to go take a bath, and I'm in the bath, and his truck was so loud. All of a sudden I can hear the truck, and he comes back. And I hear the front door open, and Emery's just right across the hall. I've got the bathroom door open, her bedroom door's open. She's up on the step stool playing with this giant dollhouse that he had built her, staying up till 2 a.m. for Christmas just a few weeks before. And I was like, babe, is that you? And he's like, yeah. And he comes downstairs and he said, I forgot something. And he comes downstairs, and I don't even remember what we said. I just remember him kissing me, and he kissed me 3 times. And the more I sit with that, I'm like, he literally kissed me 1 time for each of us. And he turned the corner, and I remember having this thought, if this is the last moment I ever saw my husband, how would I remember him? How would I remember this moment? Why would I think that? Why did my instinct and God, the universe, source, whatever you want to call it, I don't know, but something told me that was the last moment I was ever going to see him. I knew that. I picked up on that, and I had had that dream in November. And then sure enough, you know, I mean, this happened. I think he left to go see that concert was the 13th. He died the 18th. You know, this is 5 days later. He's been on the road. But that was the last time we ever saw him. And it's like that moment is so vivid in my memory. You know how many other times he left the house that I couldn't even tell you about? I don't remember. I don't know. It's like, but yet that last time something told me you need to remember this. And it's just, I don't know. It just gives me chills. And it's like, I don't know what I'm brought here to do. I don't know if it's birth work anymore. I don't know if it's something way bigger. It feels like something way bigger, way beyond myself and not self-serving. It feels like it's meant for other people. And I don't know if that's just to share my testimony and my story. You know, I was a full-blown atheist before this all went down, because of all the pharmaceuticals and the therapy not working for me. Danny had left this message with me. He always talked about Joe Rogan, and he would talk about DMT. And he hadn't even, I think he maybe had tried it once in high school, but it wasn't like he like smoked or did DMT, or he just talked about it all the time. I mean, hell, it was even like one of his passwords for something. And I remember thinking, it hit me one day, and I was like, I feel like that was a message he left for me. And so I started researching into it, and then I started hearing about all the, you know, trips that come out of it. And I was like, I don't think I can handle that. And so I was like, maybe I'll look into mushrooms. And so I started looking into mushrooms and psilocybin. And so I start working with psilocybin. Oh my God. I mean, that's like, I could spend 20 days, 30 days. I could spend so much time talking about psilocybin and what this has done for me, and all the trips and ayahuasca. And I literally got to be there with my husband when he died, and I got to relive that experience, but be there with him and say goodbye to him. And very, very powerful experiences with plant medicine, and so healing. And I mean, you know, and it's like, I know this is illegal, and yet I'm still talking about it. And I know that there's a police department that's subpoenaing all this, and they're going to get this, and it's going to be used against me. And I know that at any point they could come in and take my kids from me. And I'm still out here talking about it because it saved my life, and people need to know about this, because pharmaceuticals aren't going to heal the trauma, you guys. Like it just masks the symptoms of everything. And yes, that there's a time and a place for that maybe, but and I'm not saying that, psychedelics are right for everybody. There, it has to be done intentionally in the proper set and setting. And like, they will find you when you are meant to find them. And like you won't they won't come to you before you're ready for them, is my true belief in it. But yeah, just like through my work with mushrooms, man, it's completely changed my life. And this is the only way that I'm able to still be here, like showing up in the way that I am. And it was all because of this message that Danny constantly left with talking about Joe Rogan. And if Joe Rogan ever sees this, dude, I've been trying to get a hold of you. I want to be on your podcast. We got a lot to talk about. You've even talked about my husband.
I will tell him.
Yeah.
I've been on Joe's show 3 times. I will tell him. Yes.
Oh, I've been like, so I'm working with a filmmaker, Errol Morris, right now. And his son Hamilton Morris has, his show on Vice, all about pharmaceutical psychedelics and stuff. And so I was just texting him the other day, and I was like, dude, like, you've been on his show 3 times, like, help me out, like, connect me with Joe. Like, I have to get on his podcast, because he literally has talked about Danny multiple times, but like has a lot of the wrong information. I would like to clarify, but also like, I need him to know that like, he saved my life. Like, I would not be here. I would not be alive if it wasn't for his information and talking about psychedelics. And, but they have to be used in the proper set and setting, and intentionally and ceremonial, like in a ceremonial way. And it's not, you don't ever mix it with alcohol. It's not like that. Like, it's like a sacrament. Like I said, I was an atheist before this. I have literally connected, like, and I don't know, I don't claim to know all of it, but it's like, I don't know that, and there's a difference of any of it. I think it's all one. I think we're all talking about the same thing when we say God, source, energy. I don't know that it's something external outside of us. I think it's actually within us, and we all have it. And I have had communication with Danny, like, without a doubt. Like, there are things that have been, I mean, one of the last times it happened, there was something that happened for 10 minutes. I can go into it if you want, but it was, it tripped me the hell out. It freaked me out. And I just knew, like, and anytime I work with the medicine, like, I feel that the separation, even though he's not here in physical form, is an illusion. We are not alone. We are so much more than this human flesh. Our souls are like, that doesn't die. So I feel like he's still here guiding me. And it's like, all right, like, what legacy is he going to leave behind? And that's why I'm fighting so hard, because it's so much bigger.
Okay. So that was just a remarkable amount of stuff that you shared. And Laney, I want to thank you for that. That was breathtaking in the emotional honesty. And I just couldn't ask for more from you. And I'm really touched and honored and moved by that. And it just for you to be here and to just, wow, like it's like your heart's inside out almost for us.
Yeah.
And that's a real gift to us. And I want to thank you. Let's pivot from intense sadness to some anger.
Story of my life.
let's do an emotional pivot, okay? And maybe some shrinks will tell us this is not the most healthy thing to do, but fuck it. Let's go from intense sadness and tragedy to anger. Let's talk about Laney Sweet. Let's talk about justice.
Yeah.
Right? Now,
what does that even mean, though? We all call for justice, and we all create these hashtags and these Facebook profiles, and but like, what does justice even mean? Because justice would be, I mean, that would be my husband back alive, and that's not possible. Like, I don't know what justice means. There's no amount of jail time that any of these officers could serve that could right this wrong. There's no amount of money they could ever pay us that would make this okay. Like, what does justice even mean? And to me, it's like, I have to really think about, because I'm always calling for justice for Daniel Shaver. And it's like, it's reform. So this doesn't continue to happen to other people. And if it does happen to other people, that they have the tools to navigate it in healthy ways. And I feel like, that's a part of like my story with my healing, and just letting people know about, psilocybin, using it intentionally, that they can use that to heal. But I mean, damn, also these officers, like, I would love to guide them in ceremony. I would literally be willing to do that. It's crazy. I would. It's, you would think that people with like, they are always like, you must hate all of them and stuff. And like, I mean, believe me, I've got a lot of mixed feelings, and there is anger, but anger is such a low vibrational place to be, and everything is a frequency. And this is something I've really had to sit with. And, you know, psychedelics literally cracked my heart open to the birthplace of love and gratitude. And when you vibrate on that frequency, it's so hard to go back down to, you know, such a low vibrational frequency. But you know, I'm human, and I go between, you know, both high and lows.
In that case, you are, because you're more evolved than I am, and I really mean that. Let's not do the anger. Okay, let's talk about justice, and let's talk about, you're doing something. You're and that's, I think, one of the reasons you're active on TikTok and putting out these videos. Right? There's something going on that everyone needs to know about, a couple things, right? So there's a hearing coming up. So why don't you talk about that? This is crucial for everyone who cares about this.
Yeah, so we have, you know, we filed a lawsuit. I think originally at the beginning, you have to file a notice of claim to inform them that you're going to sue. But at the beginning, like, we weren't focused on the civil suit at all. Like, we actually were lucky enough, unlike so many victims of police brutality, to get a murder degree charge, you know? So like, that was like, I put all of my energy into that. Like, I literally, after I delivered this baby, I went to the airport with this family. They got on a flight to California, and I got on a flight with Christy, my doula, to Phoenix, while still wearing Depends and bleeding 6 days postpartum. And there's an interview that I do with Mark Garrigos standing outside of the courthouse. And none of y'all can see that because it's under my dress, but I'm literally wearing a Depends, bleeding on myself, calling for justice, you know? And it's just like, I, from the beginning, have been trying to fight for him for justice. And it's like, whatever that even means anymore, accountability, reform, I'm sorry, some condolence, something. I've never received any of that from them. And yet I feel like the empathy that I even have for them sometimes makes me question. I'm like, why do I even have empathy for them? Because I remember during trial, you know, I'd be gone 4 days away from my kids, and I'd come home, and the one thing I would do for myself would be go get a massage, because I carry all this tension in my shoulders and my back. And I'm like, I could show you all the cupping marks on my back right now. They're really bad. And I remember getting a massage and breaking down crying. And I thought about Brailsford's wife and how hard this must be for her with her child at home, to be navigating, going through the fact that her husband could potentially be going to jail for, you know, 20 something years. And I remember thinking, because this was a massage company that wasn't just local, like it's a corporate, you know, they're all over, a Massage Envy or whatever. And I remember thinking, I'm going to buy her a gift certificate and I'm going to get her a massage. And then I just thought immediately my attorneys would never allow me to do that and send it, and they wouldn't even go do it. And they would probably say I tried to spike it with anthrax or something crazy, you know? And so, but like, I have had those moments, and where I think about them, and, you know, and then it's like, but where have they ever thought about me? Because it hasn't just been what they did. It's been how they've treated me for the last 5 years. Like, I have actually gotten really far in my healing, which is a huge testament to my strength, I think, but also this hasn't been over, you know, we've been actively fighting. And so, yes, we had this criminal trial that was honestly, looking back, all an illusion, which I would love to talk about in a further podcast and go into like the real, like, facts of the case.
So he was acquitted. Just quickly say what he was charged with. And he was,
you know, so he was acquitted, and, you know, and all of that. And then that's when, you know, really the civil case picked up, and that's when we started making progress with that, and, you know, filed our lawsuit, which was, you know, I don't even know how many pages long. And, you know, my attorneys took care of all of that, and with all the facts and the details and stuff. And since then, you know, from the beginning, they, you know, my attorneys every once in a while would be like, hey, if you guys are interested in mediation, like, let us know. You know, but Mesa has never been interested. Like, they literally, the city of Mesa personally paid for Philip Brailsford, the officer that shot and killed my husband, to file bankruptcy, because if you have an open bankruptcy case, it puts a stay on a civil lawsuit. So that, like, literally, I was going to a concert with my dad that night to go see Elton John on his farewell tour. And I got that call right before we left for that concert, that he filed bankruptcy, and that they were going to delay the case. And this delayed it for, I don't even know how long, well over a year before anything became active again. And so they're literally just like trying to starve us out and get us into position of being destitute.
The Mesa Police Department paid for his bankruptcy to
their attorneys paid for Brailsford to personally file bankruptcy as a way to delay him being involved in this case at all. It got him completely taken out. And then also Sergeant Langley, who fled to the Philippines, he was served a notice of investigation. And that day that the police department served him a notice of investigation saying, hey, we're looking at your involvement and potential charges coming out on you, he retired that day.
And Charles Langley was the cop who was shouting orders at Danny, right?
Yeah, he was a sergeant who escalated the entire situation and played Death, Simon Says, with Danny.
He didn't pull the trigger, but he was shouting orders at him. And Brailsford's the one
who set the atmosphere for all of it.
Yeah. Right. And he now lives in the Philippines.
Yes. But I think it's really interesting, and it's so important to mention. So the city pays for him to personally file bankruptcy. They also, and I didn't know this for a year, and it was so devastating to hear this, because I'm like, how did we not know this for a year? How was this even allowed to happen and us not be notified? They rehired him after the acquittal and put him back on the department just so they could medically retire him with PTSD benefits. So we found all of this out because of his bankruptcy, because we noticed that there was some money he was getting every month. And we were like, what is that? So we start looking into it, and we realized it's a pension for disability for PTSD. So here's my thing about this. And I'm not claiming that he doesn't have PTSD, because I don't know how anybody could be involved in any form of the situation on any side of it.
That's right.
Like any side of it, and not have PTSD.
That's right.
But here is my thing. This man files bankruptcy as a way to delay me getting civil justice to be able to take care of my children and, whatnot. And he claims to have PTSD. And yet on his bankruptcy filing, you're allowed to ask for exemptions of things you want to keep. Out of all the things he asked to keep the gun he used to kill my husband that had the words "you're fucked" inscribed on it. And it's like, if you have PTSD and you truly do, and you're disabled, like number one, he has a job. Like, I haven't been able to work in 5 years. People are like, girl, why aren't you on disability? And it's like, because I was told that because I'm a 20-something-year-old woman that looks healthy, quote unquote. I'm almost under 100 pounds. I don't really look healthy, but that like I would take years to get. I would have to go through multiple processes of being denied and to fight for it. And I just don't have the energy to fight for it when I'm fighting a corrupt ass police department and the government, and also now a sexual assault case, which has so much trauma tied to police. I haven't even been able to pursue that. I finally made a call yesterday to speak to the lieutenant.
You've had to go
just
back
to get that.
You've had to go back and deal with police again, which
it's so weird. It's like, it's not all the time that the trauma with police is there. I mean, it's always there, but like there are times that I can, for instance, after Danny's memorial, we had so much leftover food. And number one, for anybody listening to this, if somebody dies, y'all take over doing the food for their memorial. Like me having to like cater to people on the day of my husband's memorial service.
Wow, really?
That is a whole separate thing. Like, that is too much for somebody to handle. Like, I literally didn't even get to grieve that day because I was too busy like putting up pictures and making food, and but we had all this tons of leftover food. And I took it with my daughters to the local police department out in we had his memorial service out in Tennessee, where we fell in love and where his family and all of his friends were, and my mom and stuff. And I took it to the Berry Hill Police Department, and I sat down with an officer and I told them about what happened at that point, as much as we knew. And I let them talk to my little girls, because I didn't want my kids to fear police. I don't want them to think that all police are bad. And I don't even believe that all police are bad. And I'm in this weird position where it's like, I'm trying to hold them accountable, but damn, when do they ever come out and like offer any condolences to me? But since starting TikTok a few weeks ago, I can't tell you how many officers have reached out to me, and I'm trying to like make a video for every single one I see, which I can't keep up with all of it because there are officers who are like, this was straight up murder. And it's like, why are none of you in Mesa Police Department? Like, where are any of you in Arizona? Like, I need one of you in our, like, this department to come out. But the thing is, we did have one, Chief Batista. He came in after Danny died. He actually he wasn't chief at the time, but he came in afterwards. He filed paperwork against Langley saying that he needed to be like basically evaluated for his involvement or something like that. And oh gosh, hold on. Let me see where I'm going with this. See, this is trauma brain.
He got ousted, didn't he?
So yes, so the union was so frustrated with Chief Batista coming in and trying to reform the department that they took a vote. 95% of this union voted no confidence in him, and they raised over $30,000 to hire and launch a PR campaign to urge city management to fire Chief Batista. So then Chief Batista, the media contacts him and they say, "Are you going anywhere?" And he's like, "No, I'm committed to reforming." And then like this happened in July, and I want to say, and then by November he retired, but it came out he didn't retire. They forced him out, and they probably made him sign an NDA. But we just finally won a ruling that the judge is going to allow us to depose him. And now that ruling has come out, Mesa wants to settle this case. So as of, I don't even know what today is. May 4th or something?
Today is the 4th. Yeah. So,
May 4th. Okay. Yeah. May 25th, we have a court ordered mediation. And my attorney had just mentioned it to the judge about sometimes when parties have been basically screwing around for years and delaying like civil justice, that the court can force them into mediation, just to see if the judge what he thought about it. And the judge was like, "If you guys want to do that, we'll do that." And then Mesa immediately was like, yes, like without, and they've never ever wanted to do this because they know the tides have turned, and they know that the evidence against them, if it comes out, is going to be horrific. And we will probably end up with one of the highest settlements of any police brutality case ever. And now they want to settle. And it's like, I don't want to settle. I don't want to have to, but I'm in this weird position where it's like, I don't have, thankfully I just started raising, awareness on TikTok, and donations we've had come in because I was down to having nothing in my account. I hadn't been able to go to therapy in months since being sexually assaulted, processing I was dating a partner for almost a year. He left me 2 weeks after the assault on the same timeline as my husband dying. And this really has messed with me and my kids and brought all the stuff with Danny back up. And I haven't had money for that. We were to the point at the grocery store, we were having to pick and choose, putting food back because I'm just like, we only have like a few grand in our account, and that's like rent, like not even, we don't have a car, like things have gotten really hard.
Laney, hold on. Wait a second. The government killed your husband. Of course they gave you money for that, didn't they?
Absolutely not. We've never received a penny from them, but yet he gets money every single month and gets like, a pension every month for PTSD, but also he's able to still go work. And I'm just like, dude, if anybody should be on disability, it should be me, but I don't want to be. I want to start my birth business back up. I want to start a retreat center somewhere legal in another country where I can work with people and guide people and facilitate ceremonies with psychedelics. Like there are many things that I feel really called to do now, but I just can't because I'm still fighting this damn police department that constantly keeps activating my trauma nonstop. Like it's not over, you guys. This happened 5 years ago. Yes, but I'm dealing with it on a daily basis. It's not over. It's not done.
Here's the thing. So in a just good world, the government would pay you lots and lots of money. It wouldn't bring Danny back, but it at least would help. That has not happened. It probably won't happen. They will do everything they can to stop. Not a penny has come to you from the government that killed your husband. Well, so there's this old concept in anarchism called mutual aid, in which the people help each other through mutual assistance when the government doesn't help them. So it seems to me like this would be a pretty good time to exercise that wonderful old principle of anarchism. And so Laney has a GoFundMe, and everyone should go there and help her because her vision is beautiful and what she's doing is helping not just herself and her children, but we all know helping the cause of criminal justice reform, which we who associate ourselves with this show care about so passionately, I can't even quite express it. So,
that's good.
So do that. And then May 25th is the mediation hearing in Mesa. Is that right?
Yeah.
So
I think they actually can't accommodate us in Mesa. So they're moving it, I think, to Flagstaff. So we're going to, they're going to try really hard to settle. Now I'm in this weird position. It's like, we're losing our house. We don't have a car. it's like, oh God, I don't know what to do. I feel like if I accept the settlement, then I'll never get the truth of what happened because, it's like we won't have to put them through a trial again. They haven't had to turn over. They've subpoenaed every document in my life. Like you name it, they've got it. They have all of my social media, all my phone records, my school records, my kids' school records, all of our counseling notes. They even have subpoenaed my recent sexual assault case. And I'm like, are they going to use that against me at trial that I was raped? Like,
sure, of course.
What? Like, and and it's like, that was, how hard it was for me to even just go to the police. And this is why this, person did this, because he knew I would be terrified to go to police, but also he didn't realize who he was fucking with. Like, I'm Laney Sweet. I don't know, like who you guys think I am, but I'm not a weak woman. Like
we established that for the first hour, what a courageous fucking badass you are. And so that is why I want you to go to trial too and beat the fucking shit out of them.
Yeah. And that's the thing. But then, I talked to the prosecutor just recently, and she's like, even if you go to trial, that they're just going to plead the fifth again. So they were deposed this last year. They interrogated me for 8 hours, but yet when it came to their depositions, they literally pleaded the fifth on everything. They wouldn't answer a question, but a jury can the judge can instruct a jury to automatically find them guilty on anything that they plead the fifth on because they chose to plead the fifth. But they are using the defense that there's an active DOJ investigation. So they're going to plead the fifth because they don't want to incriminate themselves, because the Department of Justice does have, has an active investigation. So it's like, so many things could go, so many different routes. We could go and we could mediate, we could not settle, and we could take them to trial. And then that's going to, how many more years of my life is this going to take away from me, where I'm not able to be present with my kids, and I'm living in a trauma state, and I'm sweating profusely, and I'm having panic attacks and hyperventilating. And like, believe me, I want peace. I am ready to be done with this. I need to be done with this. Like for my sake and my kids, I need to be done with this. But also I feel like I have to get the truth. And because I don't know if DOJ charges are going to come out, the only potential trial I know that will happen is the civil trial, even though I'm going to be the one crucified for it. Like whatever they're going to use against me, they're going to use against me.
No, because thousands of people are going to be standing behind you, not behind.
Well, I hope so, because I had like five people in that courtroom before, and they had the whole fucking police department there, and they were able to escort them every time any of their mothers needed to go to the bathroom or anything. And we weren't even allowed to wear buttons to represent like Danny. Like they told us we weren't allowed to do anything like that. And yet they're allowed to go with their thin blue line bracelets and all sorts of stuff. And I'm like, what? Like this happened in a place that we have no support. Like we had to fly people in and raise money just to fly people in, so I didn't have to do this alone. If everybody could just like swarm Mesa and let's all go protest peacefully. I do not call for riots. That is not who I am. I'm not acting for destructive, any of that kind of stuff. But like let's do it, because I have been trying to do this for 5 years, but nobody, I've only reached a small audience. Like I've been begging people, for 5 years, like who has connections that can get us. Where are celebrities for my husband and my kids? George Floyd's family has had their number one, they have the highest police verdict of all time. They raise more money on GoFundMe than all time, but they had celebrities come out and pay for his children's college. Like we've had none of that. We don't have a car right now. We're losing our housing in less than a month. We don't know where we're moving. I'm trying to raise enough money that we're living out of a bus. Like that is our goal right now, just so I can hold Mesa Police Department accountable. It's like, where is the world for Daniel Shaver? Like, but that's the thing. I don't blame people for not knowing when the damn government literally sealed the video and hid it until after the acquittal. Like, I can't blame people for not knowing, but also like, wake up, people. Like, this is happening all over. And my husband is just one of so many people who, have horrific cases that deserve to be heard. But, and those people have hardly gotten anywhere because they haven't been as active as I have, because it's so hard to be. But I have no option but to be, because I can't allow them to get away with this. Like my kids deserve better. Danny deserves better. I deserve better. His family, his parents, his sister. Like, I mean, this has affected my dad basically lost his business because of this. My mom, how much money she spent to be out there for trial. Like
our society deserves better. Ooh. Our society deserves better. And let me tell you what justice means for me in this case. It means making Danny Shaver as famous as George Floyd.
Yeah.
He's got to be as famous as George Floyd.
And the thing is,
there's no reason,
he wouldn't even.
I'm sorry to say this, but you know why he's not. It's because he was white, which
and
is
that's such a hard thing. It's like
grotesque.
I feel like there's so much division, and then I go back and forth, and I'm like, I'm not colorblind, I'm not discrediting, like there's so much a part of that conversation that's like so valid and real, and I'm out there with Black Lives Matter, and they're actually the only people that have ever handed me the microphone and like protested, literally the only group that has formed together to protest for Danny. And it's like, I don't know, and I feel like there's so much division, and it's like I don't know where, like I don't even know. It's such a hard thing, and it's like I know that it does play a factor, because I know that if he was Black, this probably would be all over. But then if I say that, I'm called racist, and it's like, no, I'm not. I'm just trying to tell you what I'm seeing from my perspective over this. Like that doesn't mean I'm racist. Like I literally my entire life have been advocating for people of color and how inhumanely they're treated and unjustly and stuff. And it's like that doesn't take away and negate what I'm also going through. It's like we need to stop creating division and come together. Like I don't know, man. I don't claim to have the solutions to any of this, but I do think that more people would know about him if he was a different skin color. But why should that make a difference? Like it.
So what I want,
sad. It's frustrating.
Well, my dream is, and by the way, I saw that you talked about, was it Ryan Whitaker who was killed in Phoenix by the cops? And that video is horrifying. It's pretty much, it's just about almost as bad as Danny's video. It's one of the worst things you're ever going to see. And I love that you gave attention to his widow. What I want to see is you and her on stage with other people of different colors, which shouldn't matter at all, who have lost loved ones to the police. I want to see white, brown, black, purple. I don't care. I want to see everybody but now we don't do that. We only focus on Black people who have lost people. And that, I believe, is why we still have 2.3 million people in prison. And we have 1,000 people a year getting killed like Danny by the cops. We need a non-racial coalition, I believe, a non-racial coalition where all of you can come together and we can support you. Republicans, Democrats, conservatives, liberals would all support that, all of them. But I think
that we absolutely need unity. I think that this division that's being created right now, oh gosh, it's there's so many conflicting things about it, and it's a hard thing to talk about for sure. But I do think we all need to come together. And I've been talking about this from the beginning, like, why are all victims, like, I feel like we should have an annual conference once a year or be doing something, but like, we're all financially, like, we'd have nothing. We don't even have the money to afford flights to all pick a point to meet to get together, and like, I started working with Macy Gray. She started a nonprofit called My Good. If you can check out mygood.org, and she's raising money for victims. She had reached out to me initially as just like a victim to interview me. And then based off my story was like, we want you to be on the board of directors and work with us, which I haven't been to be as involved with yet. But we're like getting there. And, but that's kind of her goal, is just to like raise money to like bring victims together and bring our voices together, because even though she is a woman of color, she sees the injustice happening to everybody, it's not just to people of color. There are white people, white victims, and there are Hispanic victims, and, Asian and all sorts of, indigenous and
lots of them, lots of white people, lots of white people get killed and incarcerated for no good reason. That's right. That's really wonderful to hear about Macy Gray. I've actually seen you talk about that on TikTok. Laney, we have so much more to talk about. I would love to have you back on anytime you want, and to do whatever you want to talk about the details of the case. So let's go over it again though. May 25th is the hearing, the mediation hearing. So we need people to show up. That's it. Where is that going to be?
Well, it's not about showing up to that. Like, the way we need people to show up right now is I need Mesa to see that I have an army behind me, even if that's virtually. Like, everybody follow me on TikTok, create content. I want the hashtag Justice for Daniel DeShaver to be as far reaching as any other high profile victim that everybody else knows about, like, why is that a name that nobody even hardly knows about? And if we can financially raise enough money to where I can be able to turn down a settlement and know that I can survive another year, 2, 3, I don't know how long they're going to draw this out. I mean, every time we think we're getting closer, they do something that delays this case. And it's like, how much longer can they do this? You know, it's been 5 years, and like, you know, I'm going to be 30 in July. I was widowed at 24 years old.
Oh, I didn't even know
yeah.
I didn't know how young you were. Oh my God. Wow.
I was 24 when I was widowed. Yeah.
I didn't know. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, let's do it. So where do we go? What's your pay? What's the GoFundMe page? Where should they go?
All right. So our GoFundMe is gofundme.com/ let me say this again. Our GoFundMe is gofundme.com/relentless justice, or you can just type in help us hold Mesa Police Department accountable. Anybody can just like keyword that. If you want to follow me on social media, there's 2 different pages. I kind of am more active on my personal Instagram page because I just can't keep up with all of these different, there's so many I'm trying to keep up with. So at the Birthing Tree, or there is a separate Justice for Daniel Shaver. I just have barely posted anything. So a lot of it's just under the Birthing Tree. The Birthing Tree on TikTok. And then there's a Justice for Daniel Shaver group and Facebook page. But right now, for some reason, I am literally locked out of my own account, even though I'm the admin for it. Like, all of our content is being suppressed. I'm being shadow banned on TikTok. I mean, like, I'm trying to upload this stuff to other platforms to show people, like, look, I'm literally being suppressed, and I don't know why. Like, there's something happening here. I don't know what's going on, but they don't want Danny's name to be well known.
Okay, we're going to put all these links in the show notes in the description. Click them, go there, do everything you can. Help her out. Let's do this. Laney.
Yeah. That, and then calling everybody to, there's literally a form on whitehouse.gov. Go fill it out and demand that Biden make an announcement and do something for Daniel Shaver. Contact the Department of Justice. Our civil case is one thing, but really what we really want is federal charges. We've already met the threshold of, they have an open investigation. They have all of it. We're waiting on them to announce it. Vanita Gupta, who was just appointed to the DOJ and confirmed just this last week or 2 weeks ago, third-ranking woman in the DOJ. We want her to announce federal charges, and not just against Brailsford. I want Sergeant Langley, who set the scene for all of this, and I want all the officers who got on stand for perjury and obstruction of justice, and whatever charge applies, then let's throw it at them. Like, I want this. It's way more about money. Yes, I need that to take care of my kids, but we want federal charges. And this is what I'm calling for. Where is the president for my family? This happened under his VP administration. Never once has he ever made a statement for my husband. He is now president. And you've got our vice president, who was a former cop herself, I believe. Yes. And it's like, they're calling for reform, mainly for people of color, but they say for everybody. Okay, well, then show us it's for everybody. Go watch this video of Daniel Shaver and tell me that this was justified. It was not. There's no way it could be. He had your fucked. This was his mindset going into it. He's the only one that opened fire. My husband was begging for his life, saying, please don't shoot me. Why are people not talking about that? Why does nobody know Daniel Shaver's name? It's so aggravating. It's so frustrating.
We're going to change that. We're going to change that.
Let's do it. Let's do it. I've been trying for 5 years. I thank God people are finally starting to listen because of you. I'm tired. I'm so tired, you guys.
It's because of you, because of all the work you've been doing. I didn't know that you were, I didn't know he had a wife who was doing stuff at all until you started doing videos and your videos.
Yeah, I literally am kicking myself. I have gained, and I don't think just 2 weeks now or so, I've been on TikTok. I mean, it's not a huge following yet, but 45,000 people. I mean, that's a lot. 45,000 people in 2 weeks. I've had Instagram for almost 10 years and I have like 11,000 followers. I'm like, we need to get, if I can walk into that mediation and I've got a few 100,000 or 1 million or something followers on TikTok, and they know that many people are listening and stitching and duetting and creating content, or even if you're not on TikTok, and if they're, I don't know, beyond that, how about we actually like physically do something in your hometown? Literally hold a protest for Daniel Shaver. I don't care if you're 3 people that show up. If you are 3 people that show up with a sign, please do that. Like, where are people for Daniel Shaver? But that doesn't happen for some reason. I don't understand. Like, it's just me and my kids are out there protesting on our own. Just like, okay, this is weird. Like we need people behind us. We need support. And if Mesa sees that we have an army behind us, then, well, we'll just go back to what his gun said. They'll know that they're fucked.
Wow. Let's build an army, everybody. Laney Sweet, you're my hero.
Thank you.
Thank you. And this is not the last time we will speak. We are going to do
Awesome.
more, and you will see this audience will be right there behind you.
Cool. I hope everybody comes and follows along, because we could really use the support. And just like the days that I'm so low and like feel like I can't do this anymore, like it is because the public, like just these little comments of like, girl, I see you, keep going. I'm like, okay, like it does, it means a lot, you know. But then there's also a lot of internet trolls, and like, you know, somebody called me weak last night. I'm like, oh boy, like don't you even start with me, like I am anything but weak. Like
ignore. There are thousands. Even though Danny's been ignored basically by the media, there are still thousands of people who are standing right next to you.
Yeah, I know. I have to keep reminding myself that, because it's just like, you know, you guys don't see when my kids are crying and I'm, you know, feeling suicidal, and I'm like, how am I supposed to survive anymore? Like you know, and then it was one thing when at least we had, you know, some financial support, and then we get down to where it's like we have nothing, and it's like, how am I supposed to keep doing this? You know, I'm to a point where it's like, I feel like I'm being forced to accept a settlement, you know, and then say if I do accept a settlement because that's what's best for my mental health and my kids, like, you know, then are people going to be mad at me for doing that? And it's like, I don't know, man. All I do know is that I want federal charges, because that's where we get the accountability, and to, you know, hold them accountable. And then, you know, whatever happens civilly happens. But, you know, they've been delaying it, and now they want to settle it, of course. But, you know, I don't know. I'm trying as hard as I can to keep fighting for him. And I hope that he would be proud of me. I really do, because it just is so hard. Like when you lose somebody, it's like all you can think about is every little stupid comment you ever said, and all the little petty arguments and fights. And it's like, I would give anything to go back and do it all again, and to show up and be a better wife, and to take back all those little things and him. And, you know, and just like, none of that matters, you guys, man. It's so trivial. Like, God, it doesn't matter. Like when you lose it, you really realize like what it does. And I don't know. And I feel like, yeah, that's a part of now I'm trying to be the best wife I can, and to honor him, because, and he would hate this attention. Like, let me just say, Danny really would.
Oh yeah.
But I think that you know, would support this effort because it wasn't right. And Danny was the kind of guy that, you know, he was the hero. He was the one that would run into a burning building. He was the one, I mean, God, he picked up a homeless dude one time and literally drove him over like 700 miles. And the universe just like, there's a whole story about it I'll have to share one day, but he picked up this guy because this woman was flipping off a homeless guy as he was pulling into a gas station. He was like, hey man, can I buy you some food? And he asked him, he's like, so what's, you know, like, what's your plan? He's like, I'm just trying to get back down south. And he said, well, I've got a job a few hours away, so I can drive you a few hours away and get you a hotel tonight with, you know, his free points or whatever. He gets him a hotel. And sure enough, if God did not align this, the next day, Danny gets a job in the exact town that this guy wanted to go to, and he drove him 700 miles to take him there. And I'm like, that's who my husband was. That's who Daniel Shaver was. He was the man that I've got literally pictures of on the interstate, pulled over his car to help a family push their car a mile to the ramp to get them to a gas station. And I'm sitting there driving our car behind, who, like that was my husband, you know, not this criminal they try to paint him out to be. Nobody ever pointed a gun out the window. Number one, it wasn't even Daniel Shaver that was the one reported seeing holding the gun. It was Luis Nunez, the Hispanic male in the room. And it's just so frustrating that they want to paint him, you know, and use the fact that he did have one DUI. And I don't condone that. And believe me, I made that very clear to him. But also, you know, Danny did have mental health struggles, and he was lonely, and he sacrificed a lot, and he didn't have friends. Like all of his friends were in Tennessee. He didn't even get to be with his family, you know, like it breaks my heart. Like you know, I was reading through the thing with Monique yesterday, this call I have recorded, and she just was telling me about how friendly he was, and that he was just such a nice guy, and that's why she just can't believe that this happened. And that when she knew that he was about to die, and she turned away out of respect, because she just kept screaming at them, like, how could you do that? How could you do that? He was so nice. Like, why did you do that? Like that, like, you know. And it's just like, it's so frustrating. You know, Danny deserved better. He made mistakes in his life, like we all do. We're all human, but he damn sure didn't do anything to deserve what happened to him. That's for sure.
Yeah, I think we all agree. Laney, again, thank you for this. I really want you to take care of yourself, and
yeah, I'm going to
let your army do more of the work. All right.
Yes, I would love to just kind of sit back a little bit and take care of myself and get some intensive therapy and let this army kind of help take over this burden, because I've been carrying it for 5 years pretty much on my own, and my kids need me. Like, my kids need me to show up for them. So I need you guys to show up for me and for Daniel Shaver. Let's do it, everyone. Laney, thanks again. We'll talk soon. Okay, great. Thank you. Bye-bye. This is the Unregistered Podcast, and I'm Thaddeus Russell. To join the new Renegade University, go to renegadeuniversity.com. To join the new Unregistered Underground, the supporting listeners group for the podcast, go to unregisteredunderground.com. Thanks for listening.